Welcome to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for May 19th, 2022. The agenda, documents, and minutes are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. For anyone hoping to speak today, hopefully you've previously notified staff. If you're the applicant, we'll call on you at the appropriate time. If you're not the applicant, hopefully you filled out one of these white forms that's available outside. If you've not done that already, please do that now if you're hoping to speak on a matter either in support or opposition. We will call the case and then we'll call the applicant or the applicant's representative to speak. Then I'll recognize any supporters, then any protests, and then close with the applicant speaking. Public comment will then be closed unless specifically reopened by me or another board member. The board will then deliberate and vote. For speakers other than the applicant, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If several people have the same or similar comments, we ask that you group your comments together and designate 1 or 2 speakers to speak on behalf of the group. And then if anyone has any individualized comments after that, we'll recognize you to speak at that time. If you've arrived after your matter has been called, or if you have a different matter to raise with the board, you'll be allowed to speak under the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda. Board members will be allowed to speak and ask questions at any times. We ask that you do not interrupt board members while they're speaking because it makes the meetings go by much faster and it makes for a clear record. Before you begin with your comments, please identify yourself by stating your name and your address, and I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes of the May 5th, 2022 meeting. Do we have any changes to the minutes or a motion?
I didn't see any. I'll move to approve the minutes. Receive.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the May 5th, 2022 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the minutes are received. Next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. I believe we have a couple.
2 today. First one is item 5, case 14-858, request deferral to June 2. And item 15, case 15-026, defer to June 2.
Is anyone here hoping to speak on either of those applications? Okay. Seeing none, I think we can take a motion to continue those as requested.
I'll move we defer those 2.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to continue the 2 items as requested. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And those items are continued. Are there any other applicants that were seeking or hoping to seek an application, an extension or continuance of your application? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent docket. And seeing nothing on the consent docket, we'll move on to items requiring a separate vote.
Okay, first item for public hearing is item 1, case 15043, request of Mason Amir Properties for a variance to the sign regulations, 7806, 7840 Southwestern Avenue.
Sir, you can come and present your application.
My name is Ali Ghani Abadi, 10601 Southwestern Avenue, Oklahoma City. I am the manager of Mason Amir Property LLC. We are requesting variance for the signage to be posted on the Western Avenue on the opposite side of Straka Terrace.
I guess, could we pull up that intersection? Because I just need a better idea. There were several other signs in that area, and so I was just hoping to get a better idea. Yeah,
The picture, the drawing that we submitted to the city basically shows the signage mostly on the sign on those areas are that tall. Ours is not going to be, is going to be low to the ground.
Yeah, you're 12 feet, right? Or it's 12 feet wide, 6.6 feet high, I think.
I'm sorry?
12 feet wide and 6.5 feet tall, I think. is what you're proposing?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And
So we've got the Scooter's Coffee sign, and then there's
Yes.
another sign there.
it's gonna be the same height, and it's gonna be in the same line as the Scooter Coffee is, right behind, it'd be right behind the OG&E electrical pole. You see the grassy area that does not have any grass in that, in the same line as Scooter Coffee is. That's where the sign is gonna be.
That gonna block the view of that sign?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking to see, is where it is in relation to the sidewalk and where it is in relation to the other signs.
If I can see the site plan, I can show you. On the site plan, it's shown where the sign is gonna be.
Yeah, I saw that, but it wasn't,
A little bit farther.
it looked a little,
There you go. It shows, see it on the, where the sidewalk is, on the entrance, right there, right where yeah, that's the sidewalk, and is on the opposite, there you go, on the other side of the sidewalk, and it shows the other side.
okay. And then can we go
And
back?
then opposite side of the road, the opposite side of the road.
South side, Jared.
Right there, on the
There you
other
go.
side of the sidewalk. That's where, there you go. It shows on the site plan where the sign is. See, it says sign,
Yep.
monument sign,
Yeah.
that's where it's gonna be.
Okay, can we go back to that street view then?
And then the reasoning for it is the two buildings that it is behind the Scooter Coffee do not have any visibility off the road. The only identification purposes for them is that sign that identify that there are two buildings in the back.
Okay, gotcha.
Is the cross-access easement, would it be with scooters or is it with the other retail development?
Yes,
The
Yes,
retail
the-
development? So
yes,
could it go into the island that's just north?
the island to the south.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking of a better
Mason
spot.
Amir is the owner of both properties, where Scooter Coffee is, and the industrial building that is in the back, the owner is Mason Amir property. So this sign is gonna be for the building that it is in the back of the Scooter Coffee.
I understand that. I just mean on the other side of that drive that's going into that development. But, yeah.
I think you
That's just
probably
what it
still
looks
need a
like to me.
variance even there.
Yeah, just thinking that would be a better spot, but.
Yeah. And one of the things I think we're giving you a little pushback here is because it might be under common ownership now, but the variance will last forever. And so we don't know how this could develop in 20 years, and so we're trying to kind of account for all different possibilities and how it might be developed in the future and factoring that in as well. At least that's what I'm thinking of, and I think Mr. Privett's comments were going toward as well.
It's just there is no identification for the tenants that are in the back to know where exactly
Yeah, I remember
these
this
two
as
buildings
PUD.
are.
Is there a reason it wasn't included in there?
What, the sign?
The sign provision, yeah.
May have been overlooked. When there's no frontage, you know.
Yeah. I was a little worried about sight lines, but I don't
Is-
think that'll be a problem.
I'm sorry,
I was worried about sight lines, but I don't think that'll be a problem either.
worrying about sign line?
Yeah, blocking the site.
Oh, no, it's not gonna,
Oncoming
it is
traffic.
not blocking the sidewalk at all. It is
Well,
actually,
people pulling in and out, you know, whether their view is blocked.
is actually farther back than the scooter sign is farther back. Is about 20 feet away from 25 feet away from the entrance of the scooter. Is farther back, is actually in line with the big sign that it says 240 Plaza, is actually in line with that.
Okay,
Is that far back, that you have at least 2 or 3 cars see the incoming traffic and ongoing traffic.
okay.
Good. thing I'd be concerned about there would be pulling in and out and having, a big sign right there in the median.
Is actually in line with the auto tune care. With the front of that building would be actually the front of that sign is far back
Okay,
to not block the visibility off the street at all.
okay.
So is it in front of the Precision Tune or in front of the 240 Plaza sign?
Is in line with 240 Plaza sign.
With
See,
a
if you
donut?
look at the 240 Plaza sign, see how far back it is in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that far back.
Oh, okay.
So the scooter is actually a little bit forward than that 240 Plaza sign is, but this particular sign, it almost comes in line with the window of a scooter sign that has a red awning on it.
Yeah,
I'm
It's
with
that
you.
far back.
Yeah.
I got you.
yeah, that makes more
It
sense.
doesn't even block the ongoing traffic to the scooters, so people can be able to see the incoming traffic.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Seeing none, I think we can take a motion.
Three, based on, thank you, based on the grounds that it meets the statutory requirements for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15043 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. I'm not getting a confirmation screen on my end. Are you guys seeing that on your end? A confirmation? Okay. I think it's showing up there, but it wasn't showing here. But that one's approved.
Default.
Yeah, that one's approved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2 is case 15046, request of Benjamin Herrick for a special exception to permit a telecommunication tower at 16229 South Harrow Road.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Herrick, and I'm here from Falk & Foster Real Estate. I came in from Detroit this morning for this project. We're here for two deviances from the strict ordinance, the tower height and the type of tower. If you'll notice, we're on the very edge of town, and the border is, the southern property line is the line where it denotes county jurisdiction, which is unincorporated, not subject to any zoning laws at all. And this parcel is subject to the Oklahoma City zoning. We got the tower situated in the middle of the parcel, north and south. And the only reason why we need to be here today is to get from 200 feet for the tower to 255 feet for the tower, and go from a monopole, which is allowed by right, to a lattice tower. The monopole towers, when you get higher than 220 feet, it get very tricky to engineer and maintain and build. And the Verizon needs the height in this area. This is a rural area and it's very wooded. There's ranches around. There is a row of homes to the south. If you go down one more page, I think you'll see the, nope, one more. Keep going. This is the one. So lattice towers are allowed if it's not within 500 feet of residential. So you can see from this yellow circle here, that's our 500-foot radius from the tower. We can't go north or south to make that any better. There's residential, it's AA zoning to the north and to the east, and to the south, below that red line is no zoning for county jurisdiction. So we're asking for relief from the strict interpretation of the ordinance to allow us to put a 255-foot lattice tower instead of a 200-foot monopole tower at this location.
I did want to clarify, and I'm going to accept your comments here today and not the discrepancy that's in our packet, but I see multiple different heights. So it started with 225 and then 250 and then 255.
255
Okay.
is the correct height of the tower plus the, and the lightning rod above that.
Okay. And we usually like to put a number on the variance, and so that's why it's important to clarify. If we grant 225, then it doesn't
Right.
really get you
Yeah,
the relief.
255 is the top of steel.
Okay. So if it's approved, you would need 255?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then can you talk about the fall zone?
Yes, we've got a fall zone letter. The fall zone, I believe, is 190 feet. That's earlier in the, I've got the fall zone marked out in one of those. Not that one. Keep going up. That yellow line on this one is the fall zone.
And I think the packet said there were no residential structures within the
There's
fall
no
zone.
structures, and we're, even the 500 foot is outside of, the structures are outside that, but the property is residential.
Yeah. Board members, any questions or comments?
No, there's not a whole lot we can do on these, so it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think we had one on Britton Road or something, and that one's a little more difficult out there, but
There's a bunch out there.
in this area, I agree, we're right on the line of whether you would even need to come here. And then I didn't see anything around there that caused me concern, so I think I could support it, but any other questions or comments? Okay, I don't have anyone signed up. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Seeing none, I think we can take a motion.
I'll move to approve case number 15046
And that's with the 255 feet.
with the, 255 height
Yeah.
variance. And was there another variance?
Yeah, instead of the monopole.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
the lattice.
The lattice tower and monopole.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance, both variance requests in case 15046 for the reason that they meet the statutory conditions for a variance, and the variance to the height is for 255 feet. Once you're able to, cast your votes. I guess, Cindy, will you give us a verbal confirmation since I'm not getting it
If thumbs up
on
or
my
down.
screen? But Cindy, was it approved? Okay. yeah,
Thank you
so
very
it's
much.
approved.
Thank you for your time.
Item 3 is case 15030, request of Rob Elliott for a variance to the setback regulations in the C3 district at 4301 South Penn.
Rob Elliott, Elliott Architects at 900 Northwest 6th Street in Oklahoma City. This is a request for a variance to allow our client to add on to an existing building that has a non-conforming element to it, and it's extending that non-conforming element on the property.
And this one was the gym that it encroached, well, how much did it encroach? I know you've got the visual here, but
The existing building, the setback requirement, I believe, the current setback requirement is 15 feet at the
We're at
backyard
6.
because the adjacent property is actually residentially zoned, an apartment complex. And the existing building is 6 feet away from the property line.
so we've got a 9-foot encroachment existing. And then,
11.
that's right, yes, yeah. And then we're wanting to extend that with an addition. This one gave me pause. I don't know how the other board members felt about this, but I'm not completely against it, particularly based on that neighboring use being apartment, and it's got that row of parking there, so that helps it, but the fact that we're sort of extending a non-conforming use always gives me pause. But and I guess, did you want to address some of the statutory standards? that you've got to meet, so we've got to show a hardship, and this is the minimum necessary and things like that.
Yes, sir. Did you want me to speak to those? Other than what's in the report?
Yeah, and it might have been covered in the report, but just for the purposes of the record, so we can get your
Okay.
comments on the record.
Well, the first, as far as the particular piece of property, we have an existing non-conforming use. And in the development of the addition, it's logical to attach to the building in the same fashion and extend its footprint, its profile. And some of, obviously, the hardship questions are somewhat related. In making an addition, in complying with that nonconformance or repeating the nonconformance, it doesn't affect any of the adjacent properties detrimentally, and it's a logical conclusion. The setback, the nonconforming setback is 6 feet, so that gives you that no man's land zone, if you will, between the two properties. If we repeat it or offset it to conform to the 15-foot setback, that strip of land will still be there. I think it's required to be a screening there, which we would do in either case. It doesn't affect the usability of the adjacent property. It's just a more logical and efficient use of the client's property for making the addition to match the non-conforming lot.
Is this just an older building?
Yes.
How big is the addition, square footage?
Oh, I should have the dimensions. It's about 2,500 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little better. I was thinking of a larger gym, but
No, about the size of your house.
any other questions or comments? Is anyone else, I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay, seeing none. I think what sort of saves this is just that neighboring use right now with, directly adjacent, there's just parking spaces, so that helps it. Again, I always pump the brakes when we've got a non-conforming use, because I think that city council sort of had something in mind with the code as it currently is, and so I don't want to exacerbate any non-conforming uses, so that's what kind of gives me pause. But this one, in this peculiar sort of case, I think I could potentially get behind, but I'm only one board member, so. Board members, any other thoughts or a motion?
Just to clarify, the use is conforming, it's just the setback that's not.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Rob, both were talking about non-conforming use.
That's
Okay,
true.
Sorry.
That's true, yes, yeah. But the variance, yes, is not. Which, maybe there's something different about this property that doesn't need that, which I guess that's kind of what we're deciding today anyway.
Yeah, I think it's better than pushing it out into the parking lot, just to meet that one
Yeah.
setback.
Sounds like a motion.
Yeah, I'll move to approve variance for case number 15030. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15030 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance.
And I believe the variance was actually, 9 feet for the side yard?
I'm just
setback?
going to say as drafted, or
Okay.
as submitted in the application, but yeah. Once
As
you're able to,
shown.
cast your votes. Sorry?
No.
Nope.
I think you gotta click a button. Probably a radio button.
Yeah, if you just tell us if it's unanimous or if someone is a nay, then. Okay, it's been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You wanna switch me spots? You might do that.
Item 4 is case 15056, request of Johnson and Associates for appeal of administrative decision or a variance to the architectural regulations of the C3 district at 8101 North I-35 Service Road.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Adjustment. David Vox, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. The applicants are here with us, as well as Mark Zitzow and Tim Johnson from Johnson & Associates. Mr. Chair, if I may, just a kind of point of clarification. We've got technically two separate items. My hope would be that we could put on our appeal and perhaps have a vote on that, and our belief and hope is that we won't even need to touch on the variance. But is that an acceptable approach, given that the application and the agenda is, of course, worded in alternatives?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I don't know, I understand where you're coming from. These are procedurally and conceptually different. In the first matter, we'd be deciding whether the city official decided correctly.
Right.
And then depending on what we say there, you could move on to the variance, but there's a lot of overlap there. So I would think that you could present the same application and then we would just vote. I don't know. You know, if your presentation shakes out one way, maybe you would need to add some additional commentary for the variance request. But I think we could just do it via two motions after you give your entire presentation.
Yeah, perhaps I did a poor job of explaining what I'm asking. In theory, our appeal is not going to touch on statutory elements whatsoever.
Right.
Right? And so if you were to agree with our position that the staff erred in this, there would be no need for a variance, period.
Right. But I think that issue on the city officials' determination is going to be outcome determinative on the other one, I think. But maybe not, but.
Outcome determinative on the other one. Well,
Yeah.
of course, if you were to deny the appeal, all you're saying is you disagree with how the material's categorized. That doesn't determine whether or not we then meet the elements necessary for a variance.
I agree. All I'm saying is I think you can knock all that out in the same presentation.
Okay. I just don't want to
Unnecessary
bore
time.
you with variance details if we don't get there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is a strange application. This is one that has been working through the system for quite some time. And I'll draw your attention to the screen that's before you, and this is kind of going to start the story as to why this is so strange. You see that the tract is actually divided into a C4 portion and a C3 portion. So what we are proposing is a personal storage use. So at the outset, it is important to understand that the use of personal storage is absolutely permitted. That is not what we're discussing today. No matter what the outcome of the vote is today, personal storage facility will be built there. We don't seek a variance to setbacks, to height, to anything as it relates to the ability to develop this site as personal storage. I anticipate, based upon the protest, that there will be discussion about loss of view, losing trees, and just a general dislike of the personal storage as a use. And again, all of those things are not a matter for this board to consider because we are permitted to take all the trees out today. We don't seek variances to setbacks. We don't seek variances to height. And again, the use is permitted based upon the site's current zoning ordinance. So if we look to the specific matter in which we appeal, it is the provision in the code as it relates to building materials within C3. There is no argument whatsoever that the portion of proposed building A is permitted to be exposed metal if we were so inclined to want exposed metal. However, we have a product that is not exposed metal, but if we look at what is prohibited, we see under Chapter 59, Section 12100.2.f says, architectural regulations, buildings, including accessory buildings with walls constructed of exposed exterior metal shall not be permitted. And then it lists the zoning districts in which it's not permitted, and C3 is one of them. So the reason that's important is we are trying to keep out exposed metal because exposed metal is believed to be an inferior product. Exposed metal is subjected to rust, the elements, and all of the things that are problematic for the C3, O1, O2, and C1 districts. So if you look at what we propose, it is a very different type of product. It is a very brand-specific product that my client has developed. They have brought what I believe to be the best-in-class from a personal storage standpoint to this market. The image you see before you is not a rendering, but instead a photograph of a project that they have here in Oklahoma City, just west of Broadway Extension, north of Northwest 63rd Street. And so what you were seeing is finished metal, not exposed metal. And that's an important difference because what the code prohibits is exposed metal for the reasons I discussed. But if you look at the product that we are proposing, this is a product that has a ceramic resin that is coated on it. So the irony that we have is the C3 district would allow this. These are 4 separate projects within Oklahoma City, all of which are metal buildings, but here they have sprayed on some form of cementitious product that made them, 1, ugly, but 2, not exposed, right?
Subjective, I'm sure.
Is that EFS?
I'm glad you said that. So that's another bit of irony that I'm going to get to in the variance discussion. But EFS, which absolutely is an inferior product, that absolutely hail, birds can destroy. And what we have is a metal product that is high-end. It is used in office buildings around the country because it is coated with a ceramic resin. And so because it's coated with ceramic resin, it is not exposed. It is a more durable, long-lasting, better product than many of the products that would be allowed under C3. But we believe, as it relates to the appeal, if you look at the wording of the ordinance, it says that exposed exterior metal finish shall be prohibited. Well, the two-step process that these architectural walls will go through, coat them with a ceramic resin that means that they are not exposed in the same manner that we could coat them with EFS.
Could you just paint them? What would happen if you just painted them? You went to Home Depot or somewhere better than Home Depot or whatever for this project, but.
We consider that the same as exposed.
Right. And so that's where I think maybe this code provision needs to be revisited because there is some uncertainty there. And we get into nuance like this.
Yeah,
Where the quality of the coating is before us.
It seems more like it should say bare metal, maybe, something similar to that.
If that's what's intended, but I mean.
Well, I think it is. I mean, because, it's corroded and, ugly and shiny.
Sometimes
The
it's
issue
not.
is, of course, that the
Right,
intent of the
like
code is to
this.
get out cheap products that will not hold up and that could rust, and then the city has no, ability to go fix it, to make it look nice. So the difference is, instead of just painting it, which weathers and has problematic, because of the two-step process and the type of product that is put on there, it is more durable, it is ceramic, it is, in fact, better than the EFS that we could spray on it. My client is so committed to this that this is actually much more expensive. This is not a request to save money, but they are, Cindy, if you could, or do we have any more?
Yeah,
There we go. So these are actual images. So they are committed to this because it is their brand, right? When you see Golden Arches, you know it's McDonald's. What they are trying to do is bring many of these to market and put a product that is higher quality and higher design than what would be allowed by right in C3. And so for all of the reasons that the code exists to keep out exposed metal, some have found a cheaper loophole by spraying EFS. We're asking for a more expensive solution through this ceramic resin coating. And we just don't believe that this is an exposed metal product.
So, and maybe, JJ, not to put you on the spot on behalf of the city, but do you know why the city differentiates between different coatings whenever the code provision says exposed metal finish?
And is this project in the city?
Yeah, I think that,
Is what?
Is this one on the screen, was this built in the
It
city?
might be C4.
It is. No, this is in Oklahoma City.
It could be C4.
Could be C4, and that's the only way they could get
Oh,
away
it's a
from it.
spud.
We had to do it in a spud because the personal storage use was not allowed. You were on the planning commission, so
Yeah,
this is
so we probably just made sure there wasn't EFS.
the irony. Yes, you kept out EFS, which of course is allowed under C3, but required us to do something higher quality. I'm glad you said that, Mr. Privet.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, yeah, it was 1998, a building went up, an office building went up on Classen. It was just typical industrial, corrugated, painted metal, low roof. The council became very upset about it. It was in an office district among other offices. And so they adopted this ordinance to prohibit those type of buildings in commercial and office zoning districts. So the intent was that it would prohibit the standard industrial corrugated metal buildings. Since that time, metal has become a fairly popular building material. You can have some very nice buildings out of metal, but the ordinance hasn't changed, and it's been difficult the way it's written ever since. So I think what's before the board is this coating sufficient enough to meet the intent of the ordinance?
Yeah, and I had the kind of corrugated metal buildings in mind as well, and when we've seen these
Yeah,
before, that
right,
comes
me
up.
too.
But even those are painted,
Like,
right?
yeah.
And so they're
Well,
coated in
these will be corrugated, but they'll have this.
yeah,
Ceramic coating.
yeah. And so I'll save some comments until the end, but if you had anything more, I could recognize anyone else.
Well, again, I mean,
No, but similar to powder coating, or is that what it is?
yeah, I mean, it's a very, like, intensive process to coat these so that it is no
Yeah,
longer.
It binds to the metal, yeah.
Yeah, correct, and it's a ceramic type product. Well, again, I'm happy to launch into the variance piece if you'd like.
I understand, yeah.
Our belief is we have met the burden to show why these are not exposed metal and therefore should be permitted under the current C3 zoning.
I think it does make sense to me now that we've heard this part of it to wait, if you're about to get into the variance part of it, to wait and take the temperature of the board on the appeal.
Fair
And
enough.
then that might save you some time or it might not, but yeah. I've got Lou Coleman.
Hi there, Lou Coleman, 8100 North Bryant Avenue. I'm an adjacent landowner, and I'm so sorry, I didn't catch your name. He must have misunderstood the materials you've already got, because we're not actually, none of those were intended to protest the substance of the development at all. You know, we're past that, the trees are gone, the building's going up, we're good with all that. But what the letters you got spoke to was primarily the variance. And I'm going to try primarily to address his argument, which really comes down to technology has marched on and they didn't mean our product when they enacted the code, which, you know, may or may not be true, but the fact is that the code prohibits this kind of building. It's a corrugated metal building. It's got some good fancy stuff on it. And I think as far as purely the appeal goes, what the protests are trying to convey is this idea that, well, this is really just because we don't want to have those cheap metal buildings go up. And from a citizen's perspective, the cheap metal buildings is part of it, but really it's the idea of the metal buildings intruding on a residential area. I'm going to say flat out, we don't care what happens on the front, okay? Y'all want to put this on the front? This is an awesome product. It faces I-35, it's a frontage most faces, we don't care. The entire back part of this, everything C4, all that thing, that's residential, and that one of those houses is 20 feet from this line. And
I will say, I'll just interject here, I don't think anything in C4 is before us right now. And so
right, I'm just,
Okay.
well, actually, no, it's C3, it's the north end of C3. If you look at the little tiny dot right under AA, that's a house.
Right.
And that's,
Okay, I just wanted to be clear
yeah, no,
that
that's,
we don't
I'm
actually
glad,
have the
I
power.
misspoke, so I'm
Okay.
glad you said that, yes,
Okay.
but C3 right there, that is 20 feet, and that property owner, as well as some of the other ones, are unhappy about the idea of any metal-facing building that close for noise reasons, for visual reasons. That's the key to that part of the protest, is the idea that this is going to be so close to the house. Currently, the zoning doesn't allow for it, and that's all we'd say about the appeal. But really, I'm trying to emphasize, front-facing, we don't care. It's that back-facing thing that we're looking at going, hey, you know, city doesn't allow this.
Well,
Citizens aren't going to like it.
And you don't have to respond to
Yeah.
everything I say, but on this back-facing portion that you're talking about, if they put EFS back there, we wouldn't be here today, and you all couldn't oppose it, and there's
I know.
nothing you could do about it. And so I guess, are you saying you'd be okay with it? Well, you wouldn't be okay with it if it had EFS, but I'm just telling you, that's sort of our
Sure.
our
No,
debate
I
here.
absolutely understand
Okay.
that, but I'm here to represent the people who have written you, and not all of whom fully understand the appeal process here.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. No, I understand.
But-
And I always like to hear from folks. We've got several signed up today.
Yeah.
I like to hear from folks, and I know
But
it's difficult to come up here
that
sometimes.
would really be the basis for the complaint.
Okay.
And with that, I think unless you all have any questions, I have probably presented all we needed to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that I had signed up. Mr. Box, is there anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, Mr. Box.
Well, I'm not sure there's much to add other than I think you identified it in the, I think EFS is a lesser product.
Yeah, but it does change the appearance of it to where the whole point's to not really look like metal anymore. And so, like, if I'm
Well-
looking at that from a distance and I don't know very much.
May I, Your Honor, approach?
Sure.
You can see,
Yeah.
the corrugation.
Yeah.
It's just straight with EFS.
Right. But I'm trying to think of why the city makes these different delineations, and that's the only thing I can think of is there's some texture, and maybe it can not look like corrugated metal when there's EFS or something textured on there or something, but I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you where I am on it. I tend to agree with what you have bolded in the application, which is walls constructed with exposed exterior metal finish. And if that's the language that the city is going to put into the ordinance, I don't know where we as city officials then get to start picking and choosing different coatings that go on top of that and saying they're approved or they're not approved whenever the code says exposed exterior metal finish. And that to me is metal finish. And frankly, that's probably an oversight and needs to be revisited. But if I'm just looking at what the code says, that's what it says. And if there's a problem with that, then the city needs to fix it. But I don't think that applicants necessarily should face the hardship of a ambiguously worded code provision. So that's where I am, and that could probably mess some things up in other cases down the line, but each case stands on its own, and the one that's before us, I don't see exposed exterior metal finish. And even if the city interprets it as a particular kind of coating or something like that, I do think this is a superior coating to the extent that that even matters. This is a superior coating that I think is in line with what the city has approved in the past. And to the extent that there's any doubt, my general position is the tie goes to the runner, and so the benefit of the doubt goes to the applicant. So that's kind of where I am on this application. Although I would encourage the city to clarify this if they think that I'm wrong.
Yeah, to me, by definition, that would mean painted metal as well.
Right.
You know.
But
I wouldn't want that at all, but, you know.
I don't
that
think
means
that's
that
what they
too.
wanted, but they need to
No,
put that in the
right,
code.
Right, I
So-
think it should be specific.
Right. So that's where I am, which would be to accept the appeal and reverse the decision of the city official. But I'm only one board member, so board members, any other questions or comments?
Do we need to do anything to make sure that, you know, I know he's not gonna do this, but, you know, just someone goes around and just starts painting it with regular paint? Do they decide to change the color and?
I don't know if I understand.
Well, if, you know, somebody else owned it and they said, we're not storage spelled wrong, we're storage spelled right, and we want to, you know, do, you know, red instead of white.
Yeah. I don't know
Could
that
they-
any of that we can account for any of that. I think.
Right, they could go and paint it in theory.
Right,
And be a
yeah.
different color.
And the only thing I had was we're not even getting to the variance yet, and just reversing the decision of the city official, and then let the chips fall where they may. It's kind of where I am, but unless there's something we need to do from the municipal
Yeah, I
council.
think we can put something in the variance, I think, for that maybe, to disallow from
I think we wouldn't even
Change it,
vote on the
maybe?
variance because,
Okay.
yeah,
part of this. All right.
yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. If we move to the variance, would we need to do something? Yeah, we're not even getting to the variance. Yeah. Any other questions or comments for a motion?
I think the city got it right. I move to deny the appeal.
Okay, do we have a second?
That's a hard one. I second.
Got a motion and a second to deny the appeal in case 15056. Once you're able to, cast your votes. I guess for the reason that the city official got it right, yeah.
That's who made the fault. Is this a-
And Cindy, we will need some clarification since we're not getting the confirmations.
Yeah,
On this
this will
one, 'cause
make you think a little bit.
I think it will be mixed.
Made his own motion.
Oh, I've got a nay on my screen. Maybe we'll just go by voice vote then? Okay, and the municipal council says it'd be better to go by voice vote. So the motion was to deny the appeal, which is to say that the city official got it right. Mr. Voorhees voted nay to that.
I voted yay.
Okay, Cindy said you voted nay, so, which would be unusual, but you can,
So you voted to deny,
Correct.
okay? I voted nay.
Nay.
Okay, so
Call to one.
Nay.
the motion fails. Do we have another motion?
Then I move we sustain the appeal.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve the appeal and reverse the decision of the city official. Do we have a second for that motion?
Needed David to sweat a little bit.
Yeah, just shake things up for Mr. Box here. So. Sounds like a second also?
A second. Yeah, someone's already got it, so I think. Katie
Got
did.
a motion and a second to accept the appeal, reverse the decision of the city official for the reason that the city official got the decision incorrect. I think we'll do this by voice vote as well. Mr. Voorhees? I vote yay.
Nay.
Nay?
Yay.
Okay.
so it's a
Yay.
2-2 on that one. And
That's
so we're
a
not
little
able
better.
to, we need 3 votes for a successful motion. We've got a board member absent, and so we can request a continuance.
So what I'm going to ask is, let's do this. Let's continue the appeal. Let's move forward with the variance. If I get the variance approved, the appeal can then be withdrawn if that's acceptable. We've got a big timing crunch. Is the
Okay.
we need to move forward. So
Okay, and then just, so I'm not getting into any procedural problems, is there, for the municipal council, is there any impact of either of those votes here?
As you know, the statute requires a vote of 3 to carry any motion. And since we only had 2 for each of them, if it was the same on the vote for the variance, the outcome would be the same. There would not be adequate vote to advance
Right.
whatever action was
Right.
proposed.
I just know that I think if we had 3 to deny, then we couldn't probably move on or something after that. But since we haven't had a motion that was a pass,
Right.
then we
You
can
had
move
to
on
have
with the
3.
variance.
were the votes 1-3 and then 2-2?
2 to 2 and 2 to 2.
Yes.
But
I-
if we,
2 to 2 and 4 to 0
Well,
But how did?
it was 3-1 at first,
and I lost.
to deny.
Right.
to deny, and then it was 2-2. I'm not sure, but that was the vote.
So-
But can we perhaps, to make sure there wasn't confusion, because the votes would have been,
Not necessarily.
No.
I mean, someone can vote that the city official, didn't get it right, or that the city official, and deny his motion and say that the city official didn't necessarily mess up, and then I guess for some reason conclude that the city official also didn't get it right. I don't know. And maybe they're wanting the variance to get approved. I don't know, but
Maybe they just wanted to advance the motion.
Yeah.
That's
Just
true.
to have the motion heard and for a vote.
what the
So-
vote, it wasn't just the second, it was the vote.
okay. To clarify, to your point, does anyone need to correct their vote or clarify anything, or is everyone comfortable with their vote?
So,
Okay, we'll move on to the
3 to
variance.
1 to deny.
Okay.
If we move to the variance and the variance is granted, doesn't that moot the appeal?
Yes.
It does.
Okay, I'm ready to go to
So
the,
that's what my thought is. We'll continue the appeal. If the variance is denied, I'll withdraw the appeal.
Okay.
gotcha.
So, moving on to the variance, if we apply the four statutory conditions here, we believe that we will meet that. Condition one is that the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would create an unnecessary hardship. Again, if we look to this particular piece of property, we have two separate zoning categories. So we've got C4 and C3. The product that we have, although we don't believe it to be exposed metal, even if it were exposed metal, would be allowed in C4, but not in C3. Now, the hardship is that the code would allow for a far inferior product to be constructed here than what we proposed. A cheaper product could be constructed here compared to what we proposed. So what is unique and peculiar about the particular piece of property involved? It is just that. It is the split different zoning districts and that the very limited scope as to what we're seeking this variance for. Because again, we meet all other requirements under the code. So finally, I think perhaps C is maybe the most important piece in this. Relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the ordinance or comprehensive plan. So what the ordinance and the comprehensive plan are really striving for is quality product, okay? And so why we believe that the granting of the ordinance won't impair those purposes is because the product that we propose is superior to many other inferior products that are absolutely allowed under the C3 zoning category. So we think we're actually going to be providing the neighbors with a better product, a better viewscape than could otherwise be built today. And finally, the variance if granted would be the minimum necessary. And again, we meet all other requirements. We don't seek variances to height, setback, landscaping, any of those things. We meet screening requirements. We meet height requirements. The use is allowed by right. So we believe that we meet the requisite conditions for a variance. Again, this is not an applicant that's seeking to get a variance to save money on a project. This is actually going to cost him more money than he could otherwise do. It's just very important to them that their brand is easily identifiable as their product. So they don't want to go spray on EFS on top of that metal. They want it to be prominent, they want it to be attractive, just like the one that's at 63rd and Broadway. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we believe that we have addressed the four statutory criteria in our filing and also supplemented here with testimony.
So the hardship and peculiarity are both sort of, that you could spray EFS on there and not even be here, but because you're trying to spray something superior to that, it's a hardship to be able to do that. That's kind of the hardship. And
Yeah.
Okay, peculiarity. Questions or comments based on the variance presentation? Okay, hearing none. Mrs. Coleman? Yes. We will certainly allow you to speak on this one as well.
If I could just briefly, as far as speaking for the rest of the people I'm here representing, I'm just going to stand on what I've already said.
Okay.
As far as speaking for myself, personally, as an adjacent landowner, I will say that I would frankly prefer this product to some of the other products that would be allowed in the C3 variance. So for what that's worth. And I would also like to point out that if anybody had bothered to reach out with any of this information to the adjacent landowners, we probably would not be having these objections right now, because we would have had this information and I could have disseminated it, and I might have been saying different things.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Mr. Box, any reply or additional information?
No, I mean, Mr. Zitzow did have a lengthy conversation with her yesterday, but
Right.
So we attempted. I'm not sure of the timing again. I wasn't involved the whole time, but
Yeah.
we attempted to explain what the product is.
Yeah, I think as a lot of people would prefer, months ago or weeks ago or however long, but I know that doesn't always happen, or you don't always know there's going to be opposition or anything like that. Have you ruled out rezoning? I mean, I know it's sort of a hassle, but
Yes,
Figured it was, want to keep the C4 or what?
yeah,
we have
What part
ruled out
with it, I
rezoning.
meant.
okay,
That's what I was thinking, where we see this at planning commission.
right, yeah. Okay.
I think it's such a narrow thing that needs to be addressed. To rezone the whole site for such a,
Right.
a small thing is,
No, that makes sense. Questions or comments from the board on the variance request? My mind sort of is in the same place. If the board is inclined to at least not have enough support to overturn the decision of the city official, which frankly now in kind of retrospect, I can sort of understand because, maybe we want people coming here for a variance for things like this and not putting it on the city official. And so maybe the variance is the more appropriate way to go about a request like this. But in any event, I mean, I think it's certainly an unnecessary hardship and is peculiar, and I think the elements are met here because they could do something cheaper and different and not even be here. So I can support the application. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I move approval of the variance. I think you got that right.
Okay.
And my computer screen is
I'm locked up
frozen.
at net, yeah, I'm still on the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll take it by, we'll do it by voice vote, that's fine. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15056 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Mr. Voorhees?
Yes,
I also vote yes. Mr. Privet?
Yay.
Yay. Ms. Asprey?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's approved.
that was fun.
Unanimous. Usually it's you making things difficult on us, Mr.
Yeah, we
Locke,
could have
so
started
we had to
there.
give it back to you when we can, so.
We could have started there, saved an hour.
Okay,
I
item
think,
5 was
I think the
deferred.
city needs to revisit the definition. It sounds like technology has far outpaced the language in the ordinance.
Yeah,
that-
that makes sense, and it makes sense to bring cases like that on a variance instead of putting it on the city official, so that, I'm okay with that. Okay, sorry, JJ.
No, it's okay. Item 6, case 15020, application for Allison Christian to allow home sharing at 2623 Northwest 42nd Street.
And Ms. Christian, I saw that you had subsequent applications that were in a row, and so my thought was to sort of group your applications together and move item number 7 and switch it with your item.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, perfect.
And so we'll switch to
Need a
item.
variance for that, or I'm not a variance,
A motion.
Motion.
No, as chair, I can rearrange the
Okay,
order, so. A variance for that, yeah.
Okay, what, do we not hear 7 first?
Yeah.
Okay. Item 7, case 15022, special exception to allow home sharing in the R2 district and HL Historic Landmark District at 324 Northwest 26th Street.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Joseph Buendia, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Gina Buendia. She was planning on being here, but unfortunately is sick. And I'm speaking on 324 Northwest 26th Street, Oklahoma City. A little background on the home. We bought this home spring of last year. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. Previous owners, the house had burned down, and the previous owners rebuilt it, and then we bought it after it was remodeled. Just some background on the lot. It's got a driveway that will fit 3 cars, and has 1 garage as well, single-car garage, and area of Oklahoma City and the Jefferson Park area we really like. So we use it for personal use for our family, but also like hospitality, and would like to apply for a home sharing license. Currently, we are just looking at 30-day plus rentals or long-term rentals, unless we could use it for shorter term.
Yeah, so this one we heard at the last meeting, it got continued. I have since reviewed sort of the record at the HP Commission.
Let's say
And we did get additional information from planning Ms. Friddle in planning on HP versus HL. So obviously in HP, you need you're not in HP, but if this were an HP, you need a special exception and a variance if you're not gonna live there. But this is in HL, and so this is treated like every other home sharing application across the city, except that it has to run through HP Commission because it's in this HL overlay. So we don't have any additional considerations really as a board for the purposes of the special exception, other than the HP Commission has to review it and then give a recommendation to us for approval or denial.
Same recommendation, right?
They did not rehear it,
Oh,
so
okay,
their
so
recommendation
same,
hasn't changed, yeah. But their recommendation, again, I don't know if you all got to watch those proceedings, but I did, just to make sure I understood what was going on there, and I could also hear the protests. And at HP, they seem to, or at least some of the members, seem to think that there was a requirement that the owner reside at the time of rental, which is true for home sharing, but that's the whole point of the special exception. That has nothing to do with HP. That's the whole point of the special exception. So I think HP sort of mixed some of the analysis a little bit. And the question, I think, before HP and us was basically, should they allow a special exception on this property, which means should he not be there while it's being rented? And at the end of the day, it's their analysis should have been, should we allow him to participate in home sharing if he's not going to stay on site? That sort of should have been the analysis. But the analysis that I took from HP that they analyzed it against was, because you're not going to stay on site, they should deny the application for that reason, or not recommend approval for that reason. And that, I think, is where they sort of missed the analysis a little bit.
The HP rule, yeah.
Right, but it's also the special exception rules. That's what you're getting a special exception from.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't need one.
Right, you wouldn't need one. And so I think they analyzed it, and I think at the end of the day, maybe what they were saying was they didn't want home sharing here. They wanted him to stay at the time that it was going to be used for home sharing. But I don't think that's the analysis. And if that's the analysis, basically what they're saying is they don't want home sharing where the homeowner is not there, which is not the analysis that the city provided for us. And again, I think what they should have analyzed was, should they allow you not to be there, right? In that analysis and analyzing whether you should not be there, you've got other successful home sharing properties, and you all have some of the best ones I've seen. I mean, you guys do a great job at this. I think your wife probably handles a lot of those.
She does.
So
She manages the properties.
The compliments are probably due to her
Right,
more, but
definitely for her. I'm just here speaking on her behalf, to be honest. She's actually the host, and she lives probably approximately 5 miles from this property, but she's the one that talks to would be the one to talk to the guests and kind of manage things, and to kind of provide the design of everything that we've done.
Yeah. And I know you guys have, I think, 2 other ones, right?
We have one in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
That we previously got a license for.
And I think she presented that application, although I know I've seen you here before.
Yeah,
as
I
well,
think,
but-
because it had a name too.
Right,
I think.
right, yeah, yeah.
I feel like I've been on there a lot because of HP and then
Right.
electric, but this is our second license that we're applying for.
Yeah, just don't buy one in HP and you'll be,
Well, they said last time they tried to specifically avoid HP to avoid these kind of problems.
right, yeah.
Right. I mean,
they
to
ended
be
up in-
honest, we didn't want to buy a property in HP. We specifically bought a property that was
Right.
outside of any historic preservation district because we know what the rules are for that, and it's not something we really wanted to dive into. And we'd rather try to apply for more of a short-term rental license than do a midterm to long-term, just because allows us to be able to use the property too.
And you're in an area that is starting to certainly get more dense, but in your specific area, I mean, I'm very familiar with that area, and it is not quite as saturated yet as some of the other areas of the city, so I think that works in your favor as well. Board members, any other questions or comments? And I'll see if anyone else wants to speak. Okay. I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this application. Was there anyone else who was hoping to speak on this application? Okay, got a few. Ideally, you would fill out one of these white forms. Maybe you got here after I announced this, but,
So they did.
okay, so,
They have the forms with them.
oh, okay. Well, if you could present them and then, sure. And then we'll call you up at the appropriate time. What's that? Yeah, really.
They're like, oh.
And then for those of you that weren't here for my earlier comments, if several of you have the same or similar comments, hopefully you can group those together around one speaker, and then I'll allow other individualized comments after that. But just to save time, if you have similar comments, try to designate one speaker on behalf of the group. Okay, and then we'll call you back up afterward to address the comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Bish?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Robert Bish. My wife, Sharon, and I live at 320 Northwest 26th Street, which is just east of the property that's requesting the application. We've lived there for 44 and a half years. When we first moved into the property, the neighborhood had a rather unsavory reputation. One of the realtors described it as the combat zone. I think it was because of its proximity to the Paseo, which was a kind of a drug-heavy district at that time. But as we've lived there for 44 and a half years, we've witnessed the evolution of the neighborhood from, as I say, an unsavory place to a very desirable place to live. And we've seen the neighborhood association, the Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association, become very active in the area, apply for CHODO grants, and rehabilitate existing homes, which were in the style of the 1920s bungalow type of home, and also develop new homes in the area in the same style. So the neighborhood, our property values have escalated because of that. The property at 324 Northwest 26th Street, since we've been there, has been owned by an elderly lady, by a businesswoman who worked at a bank, and by a young couple who were in the military and had a young child. However, about a year ago, the property was purchased by the Buendia family, and when we first met them, we had the impression that they were going to live on the property, and that they have two children, and we were excited that they were going to be there with two children. So the whole character of the neighborhood has been one of middle-class families, racially diverse and ethnically diverse, and then we saw over the past year how the property, instead of being renovated for a single-family use, was made into a property that would be for commercial use, that would be for renting out to people who would come for maybe a weekend or a night or two. And the amenities that were placed in the backyard of the property, a hot tub, a string of over 80 lights, lighting up the whole backyard, a fire pit. It was obvious that this was not going to be a single-family use property. Also, I'm speaking for my neighbors to the west of the property at 328 Northwest 26th Street, John and Mary Granger, who have had some experience with with noise of, that interrupted their evenings and their nighttime rest from some of the guests at the Airbnb. So I'm here just to say that we felt like we were gaining a new neighbor, and we were not gaining a commercial property, but we found out just the opposite. So that is why I'm speaking in opposition to the application for exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rundle?
I was going to actually let the president of their neighborhood talk first if he wanted to. I'll let him go. He wasn't at the last meeting.
Go ahead, Mr. Bingham?
David Owen.
Hi, thank you. David Bigham. I am a neighbor, live a few blocks away, and also the president of the Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association. But I just want to make a couple points. Jefferson Park we consider ourselves a historic preservation district. By designation, we're one of a couple of neighborhoods that are HLs instead of full HPs. There are a couple differences. We can have metal garage doors if our garages aren't too close to the street instead of having to be wood all the time. A few things like that. But when it comes to the rest of the rules, we're pretty much in the same boat as all the other HP neighborhoods. We voted ourselves as an HP neighborhood many years ago before I moved there, with the idea that while it puts extra restrictions on us, it also ensures a certain character is maintained within the neighborhood. So that was something the neighborhood voted on. They got a majority, which is kind of tough to do when you've got a couple hundred residents, but they got a majority to vote themselves under HP. Again, we got put under HL. I realize the rules that you mentioned, if it was, since we are an historic overlay, if the applicant wanted to live on site and rent, like if they had a garage apartment they wanted to rent, they wouldn't even need to get any approval, right? An HL, it's not required. HP, they would have to get an exception. That's not the case here. There's not a garage apartment and a primary residence in this case, so that's not what they're looking for. It's more just to rent it when they're not going to be on site. So the way I read the HL is, again, if you're going to be on site, no requirement. If you do want to be off site or not on site in an HL, you do have to get approval for that. And HP basically said, no, we're not, we don't recommend that adjustment is allowed. Maybe I don't understand the exact legal part of it, but that's the gist that I thought we were under. So if there were going to be an exception, I would think it would be that maybe the adjacent property owners were okay with it, that they felt like it wasn't going to impede on their quality of sleep or using their own properties because it was set up more as a commercial enterprise where a lot of times people are going to be outside later entertaining because that's kind of the reason for renting it. And if there was that sort of agreement by the surrounding property owners, that to me seems like a reasonable reason for giving an adjustment to the rule. In this case, it doesn't sound like that's the case. I've talked to the Vishes, and I haven't talked to their neighbors, but their neighbors are not real fans of having a number of people come on a regular basis, different group. I will mention while there may be room for 3 cars in the driveway, it's a 1-car wide driveway, so unlikely you're going to stack 3 cars in there very often, because then the first 2 won't be able to get out without the first one moving. So it's probably going to be some street parking considerations as well, which just something to consider. So that's my comments. I'd be glad to answer any questions. But
you sort of touched on it. What I'm thinking with your last comment or your last few comments, but if you look at the factors that we are supposed to consider for a special exception, this Board of Adjustment, this board, proposed use shall be in harmony with the policies adopted by the comprehensive plan, shall be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations, shall not adversely affect the use of neighboring properties in accordance with applicable zoning district guidelines, doesn't generate pedestrian and vehicular traffic that is hazardous or in conflict with that's anticipated in the neighborhood, And then some other things, but those are the primary ones. Basically, how we've interpreted that in the past is the sort of inquiry of, is the purported use going to do something that's in excess of what is an otherwise permitted use? So if they've got this 3-bedroom home, or at least 3 bedrooms that are going to be offered here for home sharing, if they just had a large family, or they rented it to someone with 6 people or something like that, what would that use look like, and how much vehicular traffic, et cetera? And is this purported use as home sharing going to be in excess of that? And so we look at that. And so you mentioned the parking, which I tend to agree with you. I mean, I know this area, and I know there's not a lot of street parking and things like that, and the driveways are a lot of times narrow. They're proposing 6 guests maximum, and so that would, I usually assume sort of the worst, so that 1 car per 2 people, so maybe 3 cars in addition. That might be in excess of what otherwise it would be used for in that area. You'd probably have 2 cars, and then maybe at some point a kid turns 16 or something and gets a car, but typically probably 2 cars there. But as far as entertaining guests and things like that, I mean, they could do that if they just live there. And so, and they could have a backyard that looked like that if they just live there, and use the hot tub with their friends or something. And so that's kind of what we're looking at, is what would this look like in an otherwise permitted use? And how is this one different?
I think the one thing that stands out to me is that if folks are there for a short period of time, and it's more like an Airbnb, a nightly rental, you're there for a long weekend or 5 days or something, you're there for sort of a vacation reason or some reason, you're probably going to tend to use the backyard more, be out later, maybe even having guests over and that sort of thing. Whereas if it was a family living there, they could still have parties, they could still have friends over, but you're going to get to know them and maybe iron out any challenges where you've got a different group every few days that you can't do that because there's a different group 5 days later. So that part's probably different. I mean, if I've lived next door and, the use was nightly and it was a problem, I mean, it wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't be like, wow, that was exactly why I moved to this neighborhood, to move next to a nightly rental. So I understand. I mean, I'm not completely opposed to the idea of nightly rentals. I've certainly used some myself in neighborhoods. It's kind of cool. But gosh, I just hate to be having somebody get an exception approval that is outside of the normal rules, and then the neighbors be the one that suffer.
Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
Let's see, and then, I think that was the only question I guess I had for you, but board members, questions or comments? All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. And Ms. Rundle? If you had any additional comments, or if you just wanted to.
I'll try not to cover anything that's already been covered.
Okay.
But I will say that on every list out of the planning department, when it lists HP neighborhoods, Jefferson Park and Paseo are listed as HP. So while we know that there's this underlying thing, I think all of us were surprised about it, honestly, because we felt they had the very same rules that the other HP neighborhoods had, and that would be owner-occupied. But even if you throw that out, I think you have some very well-written protest letters, and I've lived in the general area for 40 years. I moved there before I had any children, and we worked hard to make these residential neighborhoods. And Jefferson Park, the city and the city council, they want affordable housing for young people to come in and be able to live close to downtown. Jefferson Park presents that. Their houses are not as large. They're never going to sell for, $1 million. Maybe they will. No, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean. They're small starter homes. And the city needs that. And they need them to be, the number of children in all of our neighborhoods now is just amazing. I live 6 blocks from them, and I have 24 children under the age of 10 in my block. These are kids' neighborhoods with kids riding bicycles. And that's what the city, I think, wanted several years ago. And the Airbnb thing has come on, and a lot of them don't even live in Oklahoma City. You can see how many applications you have today for Airbnb. And so we're sending money out of town, and we're depriving, I think, some of our young citizens from home ownership. And Jefferson Park did get that grant several years ago to build, or remodel several houses in the neighborhood, and those sold immediately to mostly young families, I think. But anyway, I just think that we've gotten off on HL and HP in my mind, and we shouldn't be there. They are HP. And they've cooperated with the HP neighborhoods for as long as I can remember and fought hard to get the designation. So that's all I'd like to say, but I think it should not be allowed unless it is truly owner-occupied.
Well, I'll tell you, and again, you don't have to get into a back and forth if you don't want, but I'll just convey this argument and this point that comes up a lot in these cases. I certainly appreciate the HL overlay. And if you've watched me in these proceedings at all in the past, I always advance these concerns about changing the character of the neighborhood, and I'm very cautious about doing that and things like that. That's always sort of counterbalanced by the fact that the city council approved the home sharing ordinance that allowed—
with the exceptions.
Right, but they could have very easily said there will be no home sharing in Oklahoma City, or there'll be no home sharing in HP or HL or anything like that. But instead what they approved was a special exception process where they come here, which we've interpreted to mean there must be some case where the city council wanted some home sharing in Oklahoma City, even in HL or HP. And how we've interpreted that in the past is we want it to be sort of rare and spread out. We don't want a whole block of home sharing. But we do think that the city council intended to have some home sharing even in HP and even in HL, or else they would have just said no home sharing in HP or in HL.
No, you're right.
But they passed something that said you can still have home sharing, you just have to go to the Board of Adjustment. And so we're now tasked with this sort of struggle of figuring out which ones to approve and which ones not to.
I do think that the requirement for home ownership was intended so that even a young couple who rented a house, if they needed extra money, they could rent out a room, or they could rent out a garage apartment. I think that was the intent of it, but
I agree.
I sat through a lot of those.
Yeah,
but
I agree, but they did also approve the special exception process where the owner didn't necessarily have to be on site. They could not be on site and just come to the Board of Adjustment and get a special exception. But I do think those need to be rare. I don't think that needs to be the standard. And we already have a few in that area, which is why we're giving a little bit more scrutiny to this application. And I know that's why we're listening to your concerns and concerns of all the neighbors, because this isn't the only one in the area. There are some in the area. And so we started denying applications for the sheer fact that there are a lot in a certain area and things like that. So, but anyway, I wanted to speak on this application on its own, and I want to have your comments incorporated. So thank you for your comments today. That's all the people I have signed up. Does anyone else hope to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none, if you wanted to come address any of the comments.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the community and the neighbors and everybody that's come to talk. Number one, our goal is to stay in harmony with the neighborhood. We actually have invested in this property because it's a passion project for our family. So we really love the neighborhood. We walk the neighborhood with our kids when we stay there. There may be a time we want to move into this house ourselves. But we did not buy it to use it as a commercial property. We really like to share the home, and we like to host. And we actually like to have people that come from all over the country to see the best part of Oklahoma City. So in regards to the backyard and the lights and the fire pit and the hot tub, those are things that we have in our personal home. We use it ourselves, but we also specifically know that because there's homes really close to ours, we are really protective of the neighborhood. So we really encourage neighbors to let us know if there's a noise issue, but we have specific quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. We are really strict on holding to that, and we put that in our rules of the home that they could be removed if they violate that. So, number one, we want to protect the neighborhood. Number two, you know, this is really kind of just our family doing something that we really love. So, but in any way, we're not trying to change the neighborhood at all. We'd like to, you know, showcase Oklahoma City in this way.
Okay. And that's another, you know, point we've made in the past is for some of these, we do want to put Oklahoma City's best foot forward. And so, you know, people are coming in from around the country and around the world. No offense to any hoteliers anywhere, but sort of the last place I would want that person to enjoy Oklahoma City is a hotel on MacArthur and Memorial or something. I'd much rather them be in a historic district, limited, of course, but you know, somewhere where they can actually see what's so great about Oklahoma City. And so we do want some of those around to show off our city and to put our best foot forward. I think that in particular, as I've complimented you in the past, you and your wife do that with your properties. And so that I'm sort of relying heavily on here, and that I trust you all, and I don't trust all home sharing applicants. But I know we've had experience with you in the past, and your applications are always sort of impeccable and your properties are impeccable. And it's the kind of home sharing that I think Oklahoma City would want to have and to show off our city. And so, you know, I'm relying pretty heavily on that versus some kind of random home sharing applicant. You do have a successful track record of these in the past. I am inclined to support the application personally. I'm only one board member, but I'm inclined to support it, but under some sort of revisions. I would want it for a pretty short period of time so that we can see how it works in this area. And so, you know, a year, and again, board members can modify this, but I was thinking a year, and we sort of reassess after a year, and you come back and we see if it's worked out or if the neighbors' concerns bear out. A lot of times we do that, and then they come back and the neighbors realize that it's not sort of as bad as they thought it would be. And I think part of that here is because this will have such good owners that I don't expect it to get that bad. But it's a short period of time, it's a year, and then we can come back and reassess. And then I'd also like to reduce the number of guests that it's advertised to accommodate. So just given the area, I know that'll impact your ability to commercialize the use, but you know, I think this application warrants some narrowing, which would be, for me, 4 to 5 people as advertised to as a maximum. The other items, I think we can require off-street parking. I think, yeah, there's off-street parking availability, so I think we would put in there that it's off-street parking only. But other than that, those are my general comments. Board members, questions or comments? Or thoughts? Or a motion?
Swallow my candy. I'll make a motion to approve special exception 15022 for a period of 1 year, changing the required guests to a maximum of 4 to 5, and no on-street parking allowed.
Second.
Did you want to incorporate the self-imposed
Probably.
conditions?
Yeah,
Okay. So
and-
quiet hours and things? Okay.
Yeah,
And
all
you've
that.
been here before, but the conditions as presented in the application, it would be advertised with those conditions? Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15022. Did you say for a period of 1 year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for a period of 1 year. For the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception, with the modification that it'll be advertised with a maximum of 5 guests, it'll be advertised as off-street parking only, and the self-imposed conditions stated in the application will be included in every advertisement. Once you're able to, cast your votes. So it's unanimous? Okay, it's approved.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, that takes us back to number 6, 15020, special exception of Allison Christian to allow home sharing at 2623 Northwest 42nd Street.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the board. Trying to stay organized here. So first, a little bit about me. So my name is Allison Christian. I live at 2409 Northwest 48th Street in Oklahoma City. I've been an Airbnb host for about 1.5 years. Mr. Chairman, may I approach? I have an exhibit I'd like to provide. So my goal as an Airbnb host is to provide a 5-star experience, and I have read many books and many podcasts on how to do that. I have 2 listings currently. I started my real estate endeavors about a year and a half ago. In that year and a half with my 2 listings, I've never had any incidents or issues with any of the neighbors, and I believe that's because of my strict requirements that I implement and my strict vetting process that I use for my guests. I vet and pre-approve all of my guests before they stay at my property to ensure they're going to be a good fit and take care of my property and the neighborhood. I maintain the interior and exterior of every aspect of my listing, and although these houses are owned by an LLC, it is just me, and I do the management for my dad. The rules for all of my listings include that the guest must park in the driveway or the garage, no street parking, no music or noise after 9 p.m., respect the house, respect the neighbors, no grilling or outdoor fires, no smoking or vaping in the house, no trash left in the yard, no illegal substances on the premises, and you must report any damages or incidents immediately. As you know, I have several applications before the board today, and each of these proposed applications has some estimated tax benefits for the city of Oklahoma City, so that the money from these endeavors will stay here in town. For 2623 Northwest 42nd, the house that we're discussing currently, there's projected to be $1,500 to $2,000 annually that'll go back to the city of Oklahoma City in taxes. The benefit of keeping this house as a short-term rental as opposed to a long-term rental include the yard, landscaping, and bushes will all be maintained by me at my expense. The interior and exterior of the property will be maintained regularly. I have a strong incentive to take care of the property so that it continues to attract guests and so that I may continue to maintain my excellent rating on Airbnb. With a short-term rental, I have more control over who is coming and who is going to my house. With a short-term rental, I make the guests tell me the exact number of guests, what time they will be arriving. I have information about them, including their name, their address, their previous reviews, their contact information, and the purpose of their stay. I enforce a strict no parties and no extra guest rule. And with a long-term rental, meaning more than 30 days, frankly, I don't have control over who the tenant allows to come and go from their house. It'd be the same as renting that out to just anyone. So specific to this 2623 property, I did receive the protest, and I would like to address just a few things, and then I'm sure someone will make some comments and I'll rebut. As far as the corporate ownership comments, like I mentioned, I live just 6 streets over, and I'm readily available to hop on over to 2623 and take care of it as needed. Yes, the house is owned by an LLC, but I am a lawyer, so there's other reasons for that. The articles cited by the protester actually have pros for the Airbnbs as well, meaning that home sharing can protect a community's character and property values, which is what I choose to do here. I was very intentional in advising my dad to choose the Mayfair neighborhood because of this neighborhood's character and because, as shown, I live just a few streets away, so I really value it as well. As concerns with coming and going, I'll address those if they're brought up. So far, I would like to provide the board with examples of improvements I've already made to this property, which will improve the neighbor's property values. May I approach, Mr. Chairman? So I've got photos here. So the first photos that you will see are the condition of the house when it was purchased. The second photos are the improvements that we've made, including renovating all of the flooring, repainting the entire house, changing the light fixtures, and changing many of the fixtures within the house. And then the third and fourth photos are the inspiration photos for the furniture that will be in the home. As far as the requirements for special exception approval, As mentioned by Mr. Chairman with the previous applicant, I intend fully to maintain the harmony of this wonderful neighborhood, and I will entertain any questions from the board at this time.
You mentioned some of the positive commentary in some of these articles. Did you have any of those off the top of your head that the articles talk about?
Did I get my?
And not
Just a
to,
second.
okay.
I'm getting a little, here we go, okay, sorry. The one that I was talking about was the Cornell University case study that discussed the pros of Airbnbs as well. I don't have a copy of it, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I'm curious to hear that. At least maybe a year ago, there was, especially in larger cities, the concern was sort of the opposite of what we hear in Oklahoma City, which is that home sharing actually inflates the surrounding property values, because if you have this property used for home sharing, it can generate so much revenue that the resale value increases, and so it increases the value of all the houses around it and the properties around it, and it ends up pricing people out of certain areas because of home sharing. So it ends up being a different concern than what a lot of people have, which is that it'll decrease their property values. And so anything like that, I'm always curious to hear. But anyway, I thought I would ask. The other concerns, I guess from the neighborhood, it seemed like, or from the neighbors, it seemed like some of it was just opposition to home sharing in general, not necessarily your particular use. But also, I mean, something that you've heard us talk about even today is the changing of the character of the neighborhood. So did you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. The reason, like I mentioned, that I chose the Mayfair neighborhood, and I advised my dad that this would be a good place to invest, is because I believe in the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's a beautiful neighborhood, it's quiet, it's quaint, it's close to everything that you need, which is why I live just 6 streets over. I don't intend to change the character of the home to conflict with the character of the neighborhood, and I intend to make sure it's clean and well kept and in accordance with all of the rest of the homes on the street.
I think they're a little worried about it becoming a party house and people coming and going that they don't know. So I guess some of that's concern. Some of these concerns are addressed in your rules, including no parties and things like that. Are there any cameras or anything on the outside of the property?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's Ring cameras on the property as well.
Okay. Board members, did you have any questions or comments while the applicant's here? Okay. We'll bring you back up after we hear from some folks. Ms. Crane?
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Crane. I'm here on behalf of my husband, John Patrick Crane, and myself. I live at 2635 Northwest 42nd Street, which is 2 doors down from the proposed commercial property. Our concern is we moved into this home 10 years ago to make it our forever home. When our children went to college, we moved into the city from Yukon. Schools were no longer a concern. It was close to everything. Great neighborhood. I know every one of my neighbors. I've met every one of my neighbors. It causes me pause that we have not met Ms. Christian living 6 doors down. We've had people come and go. I have a long-term rental in between the proposed Airbnb and ourselves. We have constant contact with the tenants who have been long-term for 5 years now, as well as the previous homeowners who had made that their forever home before they were fortunate enough to move to a rural piece of land with an airstrip so he could pursue his hobbies. I'm concerned about the blurring of the lines between a commercial endeavor and our neighborhood. We chose this neighborhood to be part of the community. And it causes me great pause to think that we will lose a special element of what we refer to as the deuce. Thank you for your time. We object. we'd like to keep it a neighborhood where people live and dwell in their homes. We have no objections to people renting it out on the weekends, but sitting vacant, waiting to be a down market motor hotel doesn't sound like an appealing place to live.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Castle?
Good afternoon. I am Larry G. Castle Jr., and my husband and I own and live in the house at 2614 Northwest 42nd Street, which is directly across the street from the property at issue here. We bought this house like the Cranes 11 years ago, and we have sunk all kinds of blood, sweat, a lot of money into it. And one of the reasons is because we love the neighborhood. It's quiet. We've created a quiet oasis for ourselves. We know our neighbors. We have a good time with our neighbors, et cetera. My concerns are expressed in a letter, but there are others as well. And I would like to address something that Mr. Merchant addressed earlier, is that the difficulty inherent in short-term rentals creating increased prices for both the rental market and the sales market of houses. And one would think on the surface, if in fact the value of my house went up from this, I would be happy about it. Everybody likes to make money on their houses, there's no question, but I am born and raised in Oklahoma City, as were my parents. My grandparents lived here and raised their families here, so I care very much about this community. And my husband works for an organization called Upward Transitions, and he is an advocate for homeless people here in Oklahoma City and for persons in danger of homelessness. And I can tell you that I hear routinely the difficulty inherent of rising rental costs and housing costs in Oklahoma City, and that's a real problem for us. And so I think I appreciate your comment, Mr. Merchant, on this. As for Ms. Christian and her company and their history of this, I would have no way of knowing any of this because I didn't receive a copy of her application. I have no idea what her status is in that regard. And she never knocked on my door. She's my neighbor. And I will tell you, if I were going to attempt to do something like this, I would go around, take the temperature of my neighbors, kind of give them my business plan, let them know what I was up to, but that didn't happen. And like Ms. Christian, I'm also an attorney. And she says that this LLC is just her, and she did it for other reasons. And the reason she did that is because it is a limitation on her personal liability in case anything happens at one of her properties for which she might otherwise be liable. And I understand that. As an attorney, I am a professional limited liability corporation. I'm not stupid, but I'm also heavily insured. And I have no idea, I have no way of knowing whether or not she has any type of insurance for this venture in case something happens from one of her tenants that comes through, drives into my yard, does something like that. I'm glad to know that she lives in my neighborhood. A little surprised, really, but at least I know where I can find her, and perhaps she can point me toward the people who might have done something like this. And chances are good that won't happen, but that is very much a concern. As you know, I listened to the previous case on here that this was a man and his wife who do this as their family passion, and that you were familiar with one other property that they had, and this was their family endeavor, and they maybe wanted to live in this house one day. And I just don't think that that's the case with Christian Stations LLC. Christian Stations LLC was founded, according to the Secretary of State website, was in 1999. It has its registered agent for service and process in Duncan, Stevens County. Its mailing address is in Lawton, Comanche County, Oklahoma. Don't see much connection with our community there. And our community is important to me. The other thing is, if you look on the Oklahoma County Assessor website and search for this, you'll see that in a period of 5 weeks from February 22nd of this year through March 28th, Christian Stations LLC purchased 5 homes in Oklahoma County, in the Oklahoma City area, presumably to run as short-term rental properties. That's why we're here on at least 4 of them on this list. If you pull the deeds and look on the Oklahoma County Clerk's website, there's no mortgages on any of them. They've had cash for this. That's in excess of $1.2 million, which is great. It's the American dream, good for them. But that says to me commercial property. That doesn't say to me residential. This neighborhood is important to me. One of my neighbors, and frankly, I'm sure you saw similarities in some of the letters. My neighbors came to me and asked what we should do because I am an attorney and because we're friends. One of my main concerns is Rebecca Street and Matt Hancock across, who live in a house directly east, I have a terrible sense of direction, northeast maybe. They have a 16-year-old autistic son. And she's very concerned about a steady stream of different faces coming through there, because that's something that would very much disrupt Sawyer's life, and it would be very difficult for him to deal with. I believe Ms. Christian's intentions are honorable. I just have absolutely no way of knowing. I have nothing in support of this application except a letter that I received from you. No personal contact, no nothing. I don't know if there's liability insurance. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect from this. And to be perfectly honest, I just came back from vacation where I stayed in something like this, except that it was in somebody's home and they were there. And I sense from that they have such a, if somebody's actually on site, they have such an incredible interest in preserving their home that they're going to be really, really careful. And I am comforted to know that she lives in Mayfair Heights. I was unaware of that. It just, I don't know, between the housing costs and what it might do to Oklahoma City, in addition to a steady stream of people that I don't know. And if something happens to my house or to us from one of those people, I don't know where to find them. I suppose now I do, but I have no way of knowing any of that. It just feels like Holiday Inn's moving across the street, except that I know they're insured. So I would just ask that you consider this application very, very carefully, in light of the fact that we live 3 blocks from James Monroe Elementary School, in light of the fact that the house, the neighborhood is immediately post World War II, and a lot of elderly people live there, and it's they're challenged by this. At any rate, if I had my druthers, you'd say no. But I also understand private property, and there are 2 sides of the private property coin. Christian Station LLC bought this property, and nominally at least should be able to use it as they please. But I also bought my property, and I have a right of quiet enjoyment to that property, and I'd like to preserve that. So if you decide to grant this variance, which I oppose, I would ask that you do what you did with Mr. Buendia, limit it, so we can at least get a taste of what's going to happen here. Because when I, and I don't normally do real property law, but when I start pulling the statutes, and this could go on for 10 years, that seems kind of daunting to me. Again, I'd love to get to know her and learn more about her company and see if this is a good fit, but unfortunately that hasn't happened yet. So at this point, I stand in opposition. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and I will, Mr. Castle.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Since you are an attorney and Ms. Christian's an attorney, there's a couple attorneys on this board. I feel
Everyone's worst nightmare here.
Sure. Right. Yeah. But I feel more comfortable sort of giving you some questions.
Okay.
As you may or may not know, the appeal from our decision is to the district court.
Mm-hmm.
And a problem that we have in this board is, as you heard my spiel/lecture with the last application, the city council could have prohibited altogether home sharing, or it could have done it in certain areas, including your area, and they elected not to do that. They elected this process, and giving us the statutory framework and also the code provisions to analyze each case on the merits. And so under the framework that we have to work under,
mm-hmm.
how are we supposed to deny this application and grant other applications and have that upheld on appeal?
Well, first I would address your statement, and your point is well taken, that the city council could have made this more restrictive. The city council also could have remained silent, but they didn't. They recognized that there are legitimate reasons, legitimate concerns of people in residential neighborhoods to having this type of business operated across the street from their houses. If they really didn't want to do that, and I just pulled an article about that, I read from the Journal Record when the fight was going on. If we were supposed to do this willy-nilly, they wouldn't have even enacted any statute, any ordinance whatsoever, but they did. And I understand that they've included room for a variance. I get that. And I've been before this board before on behalf of my clients once for a variance, and I understand the process and what have you. How can you justify this? an impassioned argument from a neighbor/lawyer. I don't know. I have to say that I just, I think I've outlined many, many reasons, both in writing and verbally today, about my right of quiet enjoyment. And I will tell you, I've seen this picture up here. Linda Glenn, who lived in the house before, sold it on February 22nd. And people came in, and I had no idea who was moving in. People came in and started kind of tearing stuff out for this redo. And I was kind of excited until there was a pile of crud on the driveway and full dumpsters, you know, pouring over it for actually a couple of months. That didn't give me great hope for my new neighbors. I guess basically what I would say is that at this point, this is an untested applicant who is seeking to turn at least 5 homes in Oklahoma City into short-term rental properties with no proven track record whatsoever.
She'll say she's a super host and she wants to keep that rating.
And she very well may be. Right. I could go on Airbnb and look and see. I mean, she may have excellent reviews. I would hope so.
Yeah, but yeah, and in particular, as sort of part of what my question was getting at is the city council only gave us so many tools, and we're in the process of revisiting the ordinance and giving this board more tools. Including things like corporate ownership over sort of, you know, multiple home sharing properties, and you have this whole enterprise of home sharing. I agree with you. I think that does need to be addressed. I also think that the increase in rental inventory in the city is negatively impacted, right, by more home sharing. And so increasing rental properties would, I think, come from decreasing home sharing in the city. But currently, we don't have a lot of that under what's currently in the code before us, which makes it easier on her when she goes in front of a district judge.
Absolutely.
And this says this board was being arbitrary.
I was frankly shocked to see how simple it is to do this, to what the requirements are for the variance, and the fact that once you get the variance, it costs $24, and you basically have to put in your name and address and get a license to do this. I don't see any insurance requirements. You can't fish. I mean, you can't drive a car without insurance in this state to protect the public.
As far as the insurance goes, I could be wrong, but I believe Airbnb, VRBO, they offer, they call it host insurance or whatever. It's part of your fee to them for allowing you to use their service.
Well, that isn't.
And I believe it's up to $1 million for sure for, you know, damage up to $1 million, somewhere around there.
But I think, is that for the Airbnb owner, or is that for liability to third parties like me?
Both. It's both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that that's the case, and I hope she has it. And if so, then that's one of my fears. LA.
Yeah, I do know Airbnb for sure. They offer the service.
I wonder if it's
you get
required.
it anyways, no matter what. Yeah, it's required. They don't.
I wonder if it's. I don't know if it's required or not, but yeah.
And you could probably add more insurance like you can anything else for that too. But
yeah,
I do know they require at least some.
I think also that that something that's an extremely valuable, extremely compelling argument is that I would refer you to the city of Palm Springs, which granted Palm Springs is a destination, a major serious destination. City of Palm Springs, so many people were coming in and buying up condominiums there to use for short-term rental properties that the city became unaffordable even for the people that lived there. So they had to, their city council passed a restriction that you could own one homestead and one for rental. And that is an example, and granted, it's an extreme example that I don't know that we're at that point in Oklahoma City. But I do think that you cannot ignore the very real impact that taking homes, apartments, and condominiums off of the long-term rental market, off of the sales market, to put them in the short-term rental market, will have on the housing market here.
Right.
And one of the ways that Oklahoma City has traditionally marketed itself as a place to live and a place for companies to move to is that we have such affordable housing. And yeah, I love it that the value of my house has gone up in 11 years. I also worked myself to death to see that happened. But I also want my city to thrive. And if that's one of the things that we can market ourselves on, I think that's great. And to the extent that this might affect that, I think that's a very compelling argument.
Yeah. So part of my comments were just also to let you know that we're looking at revising this, and I'd encourage you to keep an eye on this space and attend any city council meetings around changing the home sharing code ordinance, because you can have these views heard there and actually incorporated into the code so that it's that way going forward. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason I made those comments to you. So.
And plus the meetings are fun.
You help.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I guess I don't have anything else to say other than if you, I would plead this in the alternative. And that is, if you decide to grant this variance, I would ask that there be limitations on it. Because in the meantime, Ms. Christian might wander over to 42nd Street. We get to know her, find out what her business plan is, see what she's up to. I think that would have gone a long way toward alleviating this. But when I just received this letter in the mail that tells me that this is what's happening, and then I start digging around on the county assessor website and what have you and see this massive, property grab that happened in a 5-week period, and the fact that this is not an individual as represented in the letter I received, and apparently as was presented in the variance application, but in fact is a limited liability corporation, it caused me to raise an eyebrow and give me some concern. So that's why I'm here.
I understand.
I think she'll probably learn from the experience, I think, too. I said she'll probably learn from this experience as well. And,
she doesn't want to come back here.
Yeah, right.
No, and I've got some harder questions on one of her other applications as well, if that makes you feel better.
Do we know where that black dot is that's almost touching this red dot? Like exactly?
No, it doesn't look like it's on the same street.
Okay,
It
yeah,
looks
it
like
just looks like, but it's so far zoomed out, I can't really tell, so.
Yeah.
I was just curious if it was.
Sure. It was just, I'm sorry?
I actually have to go back to work. So
Okay.
I hate to leave the process, but I understand that she has many applications. Are you all going to vote on them as a group, or are you going to have a group of applications, or are you going to do one at a time?
They'll be one at a time,
One at a time.
but I think, I don't have anyone signed up to speak for the next ones, and so they should go by faster.
Okay.
For those, yeah. If we could get the map, the home sharing map, just so we can show what Mr. Privet was talking about. So we have the city put together this map of all the current home sharing locations, and this is based on licenses.
You can
And
zoom in to
so
6.
We're on application 6. If we could zoom in there, kind of by, yeah, there we go. So one thing that was in favor of this application is that there are not a substantial number of home sharing operations there. It seems like there's only a couple. So that tends to be in favor of this application, but that's what Mr. Privet was talking about. Okay, Ms. Christian, if you want to address those comments and make any other remarks?
Yeah, happy to provide some context. So I've been an attorney for a little bit, and my dad and I, kind of went out on this endeavor, and, I'm very fortunate that he's had a successful career in real estate, commercial and residential. And so luckily he's kind of given me this opportunity to grow my wings and kind of do it myself. So the reason that we, purchased so many of these homes in a short amount of time, if you guys are familiar with something called a 1031 exchange, we sold something, and by those requirements, we were required within a short period of time to buy something else, or otherwise we had to pay capital gains tax on what my father sold. So I kind of put together this plan and approached him and said, Dad, I'd like to do your property management, and I've kind of got an infrastructure, I've got cleaners, I've got maintenance people, I've got yard people, to make sure that these are well taken care of, all while working a very demanding full-time job. So this is my second job, and I feel very passionate about it, and I really enjoy the creative outlet that it allows me. As you can see kind of by the pictures I showed you, I really am into the decorations and the renovations, and I recently remodeled my own house on 48th Street, and I'm very proud of it as well. So as far as my track record, as I provided the board, I am a super host on all of my listings. I've got a 5-star review entirely on one and like a 4.96 or 7 on the other. I've done this for 1.5 years. Like I said, I've read many books, listened to many podcasts on how to do this and do it well. Because at the end of the day, I have to answer for the status of the property, and if there's damages or if there's bad guests or if there's problems, it's me that has to alleviate those concerns. So I too share the concerns, and I want to make sure that the property is well taken care of, the neighbors are not affected, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that happens.
Board members, too many questions or comments or thoughts? On this one, the sort of primary thing I look for is, among other things, but I definitely look to density. And as I mentioned in my earlier comments, this is in an area that's not quite as dense as some of the other areas of the city, which works in favor of the application. I think I could be on board with this application for a very short period of time and a reduction in the number of guests. I think what makes sense to me is 2 guests per bedroom. I think in excess of that starts getting more difficult to justify, and starts opening up to potentially being an increased likelihood of it being a party house or some kind of gathering or something. But if you have 4 people or something, it's not a very fun party. So, two guests per bedroom, kind of generally, and so here that would be 4 guests advertised as a maximum. Off-street parking only for a period of a year, and then including the self-imposed conditions. I think that made sense for me, and then we can reassess this one after a year and see if maybe a longer term is more appropriate, or if we deny home sharing altogether in a year. But that kind of made sense to me, but I'm only one board member. So any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Nope. Motion?
Or motions?
Yeah, I'll move to approve case number 15020 for the term of 1 year with the stated self-imposed rules included.
And then maximum of 4 guests, were you on board with that as well?
4 guests,
Okay.
no on-street parking.
Okay.
I'll second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15020 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year. It'll be advertised as, and on the condition that it'll be advertised as a maximum of 4 guests, off-street parking only, and with the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved. I saw that also, Cindy. So whatever you did fixed it. So, okay. Thank you.
Did you get a hold of Paula?
Oh, sounds lovely. Nice to meet you.
Okay, the next item is item 8, case 15031, special exception of the same applicant for short-term rental at 1604 Northeast 10th Street.
And then this one was a duplex, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, and so unless there's opposition from the board, I think we can hear the 2 applications together. So that's including item 9, 1606 Northwest 10th Street. So,
Same address?
yeah, it's just a duplex. So if you wanted to present those together,
Sure.
save some time. Okay.
Absolutely. So this property is unique because it's over kind of near OU Med. So my target guest here is hopefully travel nurses or family members of people that maybe are staying in the hospital. It's a quiet street, and I intend to, everything that I said about the 2623 Northwest 42nd with the rules and the requirements also applies here. I have spent, or my father has spent substantial money in remodeling this one. It was, for lack of a better term, it was quite a dump when we purchased it. And we've gone in and put new countertops, new backsplash, new paint, new flooring. I heard from my painter this morning that he should be finished up with it this weekend, and it's beautiful now. And so I'm excited about this one. I rest on what I previously presented with 2623, and I will entertain any questions from the board at this time.
At least me personally, duplexes, I don't personally like both sides being home sharing. So I like at least one side to be long-term rental or, owner occupied or something like that. And so when both sides are used as short-term rental in a duplex, I know we've declined to do that in the past, and I would be inclined to do that here. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think it doesn't meet statutory conditions for a special exception to have both parts of a duplex used for home sharing. But I'm only one board member that can be outvoted, so questions or comments on that issue?
If I may.
Not on that issue, but I do have a question, because according to the picture, it looks like there's only one driveway there. Is that correct?
There is, ma'am, but it does go very far back. So yes, there is only one driveway at this time.
And then also you're saying that there are 2 bedrooms in each location, is that correct as well?
Yes, so the bottom floor is kind of a common space on both sides. There's a living room, a kitchen, and then the upper floor on each side is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath combo. And I hate to give too many of my secrets away, but my plan for this one was to call it the 2 Seasons, and have kind of a really comforting, happy space, because if you think about it, you know, if it is travel nurses, they're working, they don't have time to go on a vacation and have a nice place to stay. If it is someone who's staying because someone's in the hospital, well, they need something cheery and happy as well. So that's my goal with this property, and I'm very excited about it.
So another concern that I have is also you have 5 guests maximum for both locations, and since they're connected together, if you had 5 guests and each one of those guests had an individual car themselves, then how would they be able to park those 10 cars if you're renting both of them at the same time?
Absolutely, and to alleviate those concerns, you know, I would recommend perhaps what the chairman did in the last application is limit it 2 per bedroom. And then I'm happy to place a restriction in my rules as to the number of cars. I'm happy to do that and say no more than, you know, 4 guests per side and a maximum of, you know, 1 car per unit or something. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and again, I have to side with the chairman. I also have a concern when you're talking about renting a duplex out, because again, it tends to be more like a hotel than it is a housing.
No, that's exactly right, yeah. It becomes a mini hotel. So we've declined to do that in the past.
Like the 2 Seasons.
As catchy as it is, yeah. And with the point being, it becomes a mini hotel, and that was sort of the whole point of what the city council was trying to avoid, was changing the character of the neighborhood, and putting a mini hotel on a street just changes the character of the neighborhood. So
For what it is worth, on this location, so you see the house to the right of my house. I know those tenants very well, and they were very excited about it, and I know them, you know, I have their phone number, and I know how to get a hold of them. So they can also serve, you know, as a watchdog, if you will, to make sure everything's going okay over there. As well as I work downtown, I work right down the street, so it's super easy for me to swing by and make sure everything's going accordingly.
what's the orientation inside again? I didn't hear exactly when you were answering Ms. Asbury's questions, but what's the orientation inside? So there's like a shared common space?
No, so on the lower level, it's just a living room and a kitchen, so it's kind of a common space to each unit. It's not shared.
Oh, okay.
And then the upstairs to both sides is 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
Okay. And then your renters would go to either side, each respective side?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they're separate units at this time.
Okay. Okay. Well, that is sort of what we've done in the past, board, but you know, it's a little bit unique of a layout, so I guess I could see if the board wanted to do something different. But that's sort of where I am right now. Is since we would not be inclined, well, personally, I don't know that I would limit the number of guests to less than 5, because I would not be inclined to approve both special exceptions. So I would be okay with keeping it at 5 guests and 2 bedrooms with one of the units. But that's just me personally. But any other thoughts?
What about the number of cars?
I don't know that I would.
With that?
I think parking is going to be very strange there.
With
but-
2 cars, it's going to be a pain.
Right,
so,
and I don't even know if we could do off-street parking, because I don't know what the
Not in that area.
long-term tenant is supposed to do. So you might require off-street parking for the home sharing use, so that the long-term tenant can use the driveway. I don't know, but I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Board members, questions, comments, or a motion? Or I should say, well, we'll gauge the temperature of the board. I don't know what the board is thinking. If the board's thinking about approving both of these, let me know. And if not, I have a question for the applicant, basically.
I could get on board with both of them for a very short period of time, given the location and the target market.
Yeah, to close the innovation district and all the stuff that's going in there. It will be needed for sure.
But maximum of 1 year is what I'm thinking.
Just to monitor, see how it goes.
Um, Yeah, if the board's inclined to do that, I would lower the maximum number of guests.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, to 8. I'm just saying that, I still don't agree, but it would be the board voting me out, basically, and minimizing my 1 no vote. But if the board's inclined to do that, I would recommend lowering the number of guests to 2 per unit. But if there's still opposition to approving both, then we would need 3 to approve it, so.
I'm okay with that. I mean, reasonable for this situation, for sure, I believe.
And Ms. Asper, you tend to approve both? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, without a doubt.
With
But, I
8?
mean, if we reduce the number of guests, then I'm okay with it.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval. This one, maximum term, 1 year, ask you to advertise 4 guests. And I'm at a loss for how to word parking.
I think we just address it next year and see how it goes, because I
Perfect.
don't know how that's going to work, so.
I have nothing to add on parking.
For this
2
one, it'll
guests
just be,
each, or can it just be 4 for?
this one will just be advertised as a maximum of 4 guests
Right.
for 1604.
Okay.
So, and then it'd be a maximum of 4 for 1606 also. So it's 8 total between the 2.
Yeah.
That make sense?
No, I thought it was gonna be 2 and 2, but.
Oh, okay. I wasn't thinking that, because it's 2 bedroom, and so I was thinking 4 maximum. I mean, that's interesting. Do we have a second? Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15031 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year and on the condition that it'll be advertised as a maximum of 4 guests and include the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. Okay, that one's approved. And then do we have a motion for the second? This is item number 9.
Yeah, same motion.
that we approve the special exception for case number, which one are we on now? 15032,
2.
with the same conditions.
Okay.
So, you can put that.
And a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15032 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year on the condition that it advertises a maximum of 4 guests and include the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Cast your votes, please.
Oh, this one is hers too. Oh.
And it's approved.
The screen is showing something really odd. Monica's voting no, and she's not present.
Mine doesn't show that. So I don't know why yours is showing that. But, oh, no, that's showing the total. And then she's right there. Yeah, yeah, okay. Right. Okay,
Ready?
yeah.
Item 10 is case 15033, application by the same applicant for home sharing at 3235 Northwest 42nd Street.
So with this property, like I've mentioned previously, my rules and requirements and my Airbnb rating and kind of my standard for the properties will apply to this house as well. What's unique about this house is it's really close to Integris Hospital. So kind of the same marketing base as the 1604 duplex, which was over by OU Med. So this house will be known as, I hate to give too many of my secrets away, as the library. So there'll be a lot of bookcases and it'll be very quiet. It's supposed to be, or it is a very quiet street, which is what I like. And with the target market, like I mentioned, you want something that's very nice and very happy because generally you'll have long-term travel nurses or potentially family members of people that are in the hospital. So Mr. Chairman, may I approach with some photos of this house?
Sure.
So this house did receive some protests, and it seemed like the general concerns were focused more on home sharing in general and not as much, and parking as well, and not as much, my specific application. What I would say about the parking aspect, the photo does not truly do the driveway justice because that photo that's provided has a trailer in the driveway, so it's longer than that. But I plan to provide the guests with a garage door opener so that you can fit a car in there, as well as 2 cars in the driveway. As you see in my rules, street parking is not allowed, as well as quiet hours are enforced. And with this house, it was pretty much ready to go as purchased. However, we have spent, or my dad spent, substantial money in getting the landscaping cleaned up because the trees were very overgrown, the bushes were very overgrown, and it looked kind of like an eyesore. So I will entertain questions from the board on this application at this time.
This one seemed also in, sort of right there near the Parkway and not near a lot of other home sharing properties.
Yeah.
And so that works in your favor. Yeah, I don't know. Board members, any questions or comments? And I think you're correct. We did have 2 protest letters. But I agreed with you that they did seem to object more to the idea of home sharing in general and not necessarily your unique application. But those are noted, and it's always good to hear from the neighbors and to see kind of what they think about these different purported uses. So I don't have anyone signed up. Was anyone hoping to speak on this application? Board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll go ahead and move approval for 1 year. Advertise your own self-imposed rules.
And it's already got no street parking on it. so
Right.
there you go.
For a term of 1 year.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception to case 15033 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year on the condition that it'll be advertised with the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you,
All right.
board. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item 11, case 15041, special exception to allow, of Nathan Jones to allow home sharing at 2130 North Bath Avenue.
Hi, I'm William Perez, representing Nathan Jones. Sarah Mathis was supposed to be, she had a family emergency today.
Well, thank you for being here and covering.
Thanks, I don't know.
Take it easy on you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you wanted to just give us a brief overview of this application?
That's about all I know is, I guess it was ran as an Airbnb before the home sharing took place in 2019. So Nathan bought it, so he can just continue to run it as an Airbnb. They don't live here, they live in California. They bought it for a vacation home, so while they're in both places, just rent it out.
Okay. I know it says 2-bedroom with maximum advertised as 6 guests.
Yeah, and we can change it. I heard you telling everybody else, we can change it to 4 guests. There is a garage, they can park in the garage. We'll do a garage opener as well. They
Okay.
did put up a privacy fence as well, so
Okay.
you can do any adjustment you want.
And I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Was anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Again, this is an area that is a little more east than some of the concentration of other
Yes.
home sharing properties, and so that, yeah, works in your favor. I think, yeah, it doesn't look like there's too much out there, which works in your favor. So I can get on board with, although I did want to reduce the number of guests that this is advertised to. 2-bedroom, I was thinking 4 or maybe 5. I don't know what the board thought about that, but advertising 2-bedroom to 6 guests seemed a little excessive to me.
Especially with a 1.1 bathroom it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can change.
So 4 or 5, or what was the board thinking?
I think 4.
Okay.
Okay.
That,
Okay. And sounds like a motion?
Oh, yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the special exception case number 15041, with 4 guests, a maximum of 2 years. And all of the other requirements listed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15041 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years. It'll be advertised as a maximum of 4 guests instead of 6, and include the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12, case 15042, special exception to allow home sharing at 2708 West Park Place.
Good afternoon. I'll be speaking for my wife.
Okay.
My name is Catherine Mathis.
Okay.
English is not her first language, so it's a little nervous for her. And she's also 8 months pregnant, so she could, any stress could make that drop.
Yeah, we'll try to de-stress this then.
So
yeah.
we'll try to de-stress that. We're speaking about 2708 West Park Place. My wife purchased the home before we were married. And since we've allowed her family to come and stay for months, traveling across from Europe to here to stay for months, I have family in the Panhandle and in Texas and all over the country that has come to Oklahoma City and stayed. We've had a niece recently that lost power in Seminole that came and stayed, and we also just stayed in it for the last 6 months while our house was being cleaned up of mold. When she purchased the home, we weren't married. We stayed in, my house is at 2812 Northwest 16th, so it's only about 5 blocks away. So we also stayed at her house and my house until we got married, and we came to our house. I guess I'm open for questions. It's a 2-bedroom home. There is space in the drive that could accommodate up to 4 cars. It is a little bit of juggling, as we do know, having 2 cars and stayed there for the last 6 months, making sure that the person that leaves first parks on the end so that we don't have to do I called it the car circus, but yeah, we've written some rules, done some research, and a quiet time from 10:30 to 6:30 a.m. Let's see, what else? There's no smoking, there's no parties. We do have a ring on the front door to let us know when someone comes in and comes out. We are only 5 blocks away. If someone were to need us, we could be there, which we've always done for our friends and our family that have stayed there. We have a friend from New York City that comes in for a month at a time, so
Okay.
I'm open for questions.
You've probably heard our comments from the prior applications by
Yes,
this
of
point.
course.
And so we've got 2-bedroom and 6 guests. I was thinking of limiting that to 4 or 5 guests.
Sure, absolutely. We have a sleeper couch, and we've just,
Okay.
some
yeah.
relatives have kids that like to have the kids sleep on the sleeper
Yeah.
couch, so
Okay.
absolutely, we can alter that.
Okay. And again, this didn't look too concentrated over there. It's getting close, but
I had no idea there was so much.
yeah, there's a lot of them clustered in certain areas. But this one's I guess a little bit out of the clusters, and so it's not too offensive from my perspective. We start getting a bunch on the same street, I start kind of having a lot more scrutiny, but I'm not seeing that on this map. So, board members, any questions or comments?
I have a quick question, and it's just because of what you put in your application, which states not suitable for children 2 to 12 years. What's not suitable in that house?
We have a lot of old cameras and a few like family heirlooms that,
It's just personal things that you
it's
have
some
in the
personal
house.
things that we've just had in the house. We can absolutely take some of that out. And we have had kids. We recently had our family doctor stay there while she sold a house and purchased a house. Like I said, my niece was there recently with their 2 children and their 2 dogs. So, you know, we've had some exceptions to people staying there, but we were just trying to keep it.
Oh, so thank you, because I was just wondering if it was ghosts, witches, and warlocks.
No.
Children 2 to 12.
I mean, we love kids. We've got one and one on the way, so.
Well, I mean, that
And
just
when we
kinda-
stayed there, we had 2 dogs staying, so like, we're
Okay.
not opposed to that. It's just a little bit of an extra cleaning, you know.
Okay.
Getting somebody to pick up the poop.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Now you might need supplies they'll leave behind for you.
Yeah.
Get a use out of them.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Was anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none. I was thinking we're a little bit of a cluster here, so maybe a year or 2, and then limiting it. I could get on board with probably 5 guests, but that's kind of my thought. Questions, comments?
So I do have a comment, because
Okay.
I always, when I hear an odd number in a 2-bedroom home,
Yeah.
I always want to know how many bathrooms are in there, only given the fact, when you're talking about 5 adults, then time consumed in the bathroom can be like too long. So how many bathrooms do you have?
We have 1.
Just 1. So would that change your mind to maybe 4? Or are you still on
And a
5?
hole in the backyard.
Not entirely, but yeah, really. That's the hazard for the kids. No, not entirely. I mean, at a certain point, we get to stretching what we're looking at a little bit too much. To me, it starts getting inside the home. I feel like that starts getting a little bit of a stretch, other than obviously how the home's oriented and how many rooms there are and stuff. But that personally doesn't change the calculus for me in this case. The main reason I'm doing that, to be personally, and we've talked about it in other cases, is it deters, if it's advertised as a lower number, it deters the chances that someone's going to reserve your house as a party house or something like that. And so if we do 4 or 5, so that's what I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily looking at the number of bathrooms and that kind of stuff. It's just, if you get a 2-bedroom and you get 6 guests, that opens it to a new category of people that might be using it for different purposes.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of.
So would we do maximum or up to 5?
I would say just a maximum of 5 personally. So,
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and it could be the board if the board wants to do 4, but on this one, I can get on board with 5.
I mean, it was a challenge with just 2 of us and a kid, coming from a 2-bedroom.
Right.
From a 2-bathroom home. But,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. So it sounds like a motion?
Did we say the amount of time?
We have not. I proposed a year or 2 just to see how the board felt about that, but just knowing that we're expecting some revisions to the code provisions at some point soon, and so we don't want to have these out there for too long. But I could see a year or 2 depending on what the board feels like.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with 1 year.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion unless somebody else formulated one. I move approval, maximum 1 year. Request that you advertise up to 5 guests and advertise the self-imposed conditions.
Absolutely.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15042 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year. It'll be advertised on the condition that it'll be advertised as a maximum of 5 guests and include the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Cast your votes once you're able to. And it's approved.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Good luck.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Congratulations on your baby.
Item 13, case 15044 and 57, special exception of Tyler Homes to allow home sharing at 1129 and 1131 Northwest 47th Street.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Holmes. My address is 2304 Northwest 56th Terrace. And here to present on 1129 and 1131. This is a duplex, 2 single bedrooms, essentially front doors on the front of the house. It's just between Western and Classen, so that sliver kind of there just west of Western Avenue. And essentially what we're proposing on this is 2 Airbnb units. Each unit would sleep 3 people, mainly because we do fold-up cribs, so we actually can have children that can stay in the unit as well. A little bit of backstory on kind of me is been involved in neighborhoods for a while. I used to be president of our neighborhood organization in a historical neighborhood called Gatewood, so care a lot about neighborhoods. I no longer live there, but very familiar with what's, keeping neighborhoods very important. So I also own a cleaning company, and so with that, we clean other people's Airbnbs, and we also service our own in those ways as well. So when it comes to things that we like to do on our units, we're really trying to, we take good ideas from other people, and the biggest thing is everyone wants a quiet stay. And so a big thing that we like to do is these are about, I think they're 600 square feet each. We like to keep our units typically small to basically make it so you can't throw a party or have a less viable party. I like duplexes in this instance because actually a lot of your guests actually can monitor each other. And so that actually allows us to have quality control on sound and that. So I previously I've been doing Airbnb for, actually, I owned a property and managed 4 units before any of this was done about 4 years ago in the Plaza District. Worked really well. Our cleaner literally is so friendly that she would watch the next door neighbor's dogs, so we actually became friends with them. Just a small note there, that's her actually standing there in the yellow jacket. This has parking in the back, enough for 2 cars. It is a small driveway, but similar to the Plaza District unit we had, it was just like this, but we make it so you do not block the driveway and the cars are not seen in the back, which is actually an ideal thing in neighborhoods like this. We like it close to Western Avenue because people that like to frequent and come to these areas, they'll do staycations, so they actually even live in town, and they'll actually go visit the area and some of that, and it gives sometimes a safe place to stay and also just a convenient place to stay. And it's, the type of people we'll have, you've probably heard it all, but really from, we'll get, soon we're gonna get long bookings on this from nurses. We've had construction people, also people that are doing home renovations as well. And so there's just a lot of variables on this. So the guests will range all over, especially kind of in this type of location. So that gravel lot you see there is also not ours. That is the next door neighbor. But yeah, that's our parking in the back and the size.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. So we've got, I guess you said a gravel lot there. That one's not yours. But behind this duplex is a concrete lot, I guess, and that's where the guests will park?
Yes.
And not in the driveway?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
You've probably seen, we've had some protest letters on this one. Did you want to address the protests?
I think I only saw one come in.
That's a fair point. We got some via email today, so they're
Okay.
sort of past the deadline, but we still consider any commentary from the public. I guess you can address the one that you heard, and then I'll let you know about as I get through these things. But
I believe it was the one, they have a younger daughter, and they just had concerns having their daughter close to these homes.
Yeah.
My comment on that is, we expect people to be good people. I think you could have that issue. It could even be worse with the long-term rental, actually. So with that, I understand the point and the fear, but that's something that, that's just a people thing, and that's, I think, what the laws and city ordinances can help mandate. Parties also, we've never had issues actually with a party. When you do it, the issue we'll have is actually with the next door neighbor, and we will, like in the plaza, we would literally let them know immediately, and it would stop. So yeah.
So kind of the self-regulating aspect of home sharing, where your tenants are going to try to keep their rating on Airbnb or whatever it is intact. So it's kind of a self-regulating thing. We had a recent one from Cassidy Smith, and I think that was the only ones that we've received, although we've got someone signed up to speak. Okay. And then the one from Ms. Smith, see if I can summarize the comments. Yeah, concerned about the density of these home sharing properties, and also the inventory rental, the rental inventory in the city being taken away. And then also a concern about the reporting on the Action Center, or reporting to the Action Center, apparently not being that reliable. So I don't know if anyone from the city has any comments on that or not, but just, they're supposed to have reports that the Action Center hears. Eventually they come back to us if I think they get 3.
Yeah, have we ever?
We haven't had
anything come back to us?
So
Any kind of feedback?
this letter points out that there have been multiple reports from the Action Center, not on you, but in other instances, and nothing seems to have been done about it. So,
Yeah, the comment on density, that is, that's a double-edged sword, or it's honestly just a dual issue. We bought this as a duplex, no conversion, so that's in it. This is going to be a common thing in an area like this.
well, not the density of the property, but the density of home sharing in a certain area.
Okay.
That much density.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's I mean, that with that, and this is maybe my idealistic side, but with there's some really special people that can stay at these, and it's a really special experience that can really be good outside of even. It's good for the district. It's good for areas like that, and it's why why people like to live in these areas, because they sustain and they stay alive. The people that will stay here, like Stella Nova's at the end of the block, it's just, we like coffee shops. Everyone likes coffee shops, but it's good for business, even outside of even your hotel and sales tax. So, but that's, I do understand the density, and definitely understand their comment.
We've got someone sign up to speak, so we'll bring you back up after that. But Ms. Reynolds?
I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the process.
Thanks for staying all the way to the end.
Sure. So I'm speaking on behalf of my own house and 3 other homeowners in the zone. And also Cassidy asked me to be here. I feel like, we all feel like, there's a lot of disruption in businesses that don't need to be disrupted. We've got an economically priced hotel within 5 blocks of this location.
Is that the Bradford you're talking about?
Sleep Inn.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Hotel.
It's economically
They want to
priced.
come to our neighborhood, which I love.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a murder there for a number of years. Well, not on my street. No, I don't know about the whole way down. If they want to come and enjoy our neighborhood, or if they, want to, be able to get a bus downtown, it's one of the best bus lines, then they could be at that hotel. It's walking distance from all those places. Not always a pleasant walk, because there's not a sidewalk. Cross traffic is dangerous, and there is a lot of parking in the street. I do like the way the place looks now. It looks very nice. We feel like we want to encourage home ownership or rental to people who live there. We got a school right there, a block away. And we have, people could have jobs or second jobs at businesses that are close by. There are a lot of businesses close by. People mostly live quite a distance from those businesses. And we'd like to see that. So the density, there's a lot of those dots in that map that you showed, which I didn't know existed until it's very interesting. There's a lot of dots close to us. Now, I don't know if 1145 and a half Northwest 48th or 1124 Northwest 47th are on that map because I can't tell. But they are short-term rentals.
On 47th, did you say?
On 47th, 1124, if I have the address right.
Okay.
And 1145 and a half Northwest 48th, which is across the street from my house and is actually fronts military.
Yeah, I know there are some, we've approved some, and I remember, we've approved some in that area, and I specifically remember approving them in that area, so that doesn't surprise me to hear you say that.
So 1 block away, you could say a block and a half, one of them.
Yeah.
So we feel, appreciate the opportunity to at least slow it down a little bit, hopefully have the opportunity for people to move in, either as owners or renters, into our neighborhood. What was I going to say? Well, it was spoken before in one of the other cases about, the cost of homes going up. We are a little bit getting gentrified upon in our neighborhood, as you probably know. And we feel like we're a little bit threatened, well, let's just say, encroached on by people who have more money and more influence than we have.
We had one at the last meeting, actually, that was in this area. And that was one of the concerns I had, was they were trying to get a variance from the setback requirements. And ultimately, it was not to overbuild on the property. It was literally just moving the property over. But I know planning has had some where they will come in and overbuild, and so in that area. And so you'll take a house that was 1,400 square feet, buy it, knock it down, and build something that's 3,000 square feet, and they're selling it for $600,000, right? It's totally changing that area. And it's sort of moving north away from Mesta Park and the Paseo, and now it's hitting your area. And so I agree with you, it's changing a lot. And so we're aware of that. So
If we didn't own our house, it's very possible we couldn't afford to rent a house. Of course, if we sold it, then we could rent in our neighborhood.
Right.
And then a business comes in, and this is something that we've had a lot in Helm Farm. A business comes in, and they're supposed to follow the rules. And if they don't, it's up to us to do the legwork and the complaining and the appearing and the research to get them to comply. And sometimes, even with that, they do not comply.
Mm-hmm.
So another business, it is a business. It's not a business that I'm necessarily opposed to, but it is a business, and it has rules to follow, and they're difficult to enforce. I believe that's all that I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Okay.
Thank you very much, Lou Coleman again. And I actually wanted to, in connection with this, address something, Mr. Chair, that I have heard you say once or twice today. And it's a question that I can answer. And the question was, the city has given you, has allowed home sharing basically across the city with certain exceptions and under certain circumstances, and has given you some tools with which to decide whether or not to allow those exceptions, to allow things to happen in certain places. And your question was, but we are, your appellate authority is the district court, and how do you, your question was, how, if you go to the district court, how will it not be arbitrary if you have allowed some and disallowed others? And my answer to that, and I'm speaking from the district court perspective, my answer to that is that The city has given you the discretion to decide in individual cases, based on individual circumstances, whether or not any given request needs to be granted or denied. If you exercise that discretion, you have that authority. If you exercise that discretion and you have a reason for doing so that's backed up by something, then you have exercised discretion, you have the authority to do that, and the district court's not going to mess with it.
Sure,
If you
sure,
don't
there's
have,
no-
you
yeah,
don't
there's no
have to
laws
do
to
them all.
prevent it.
But I guess what I'm getting at is two applications, hypothetically, two applications, very similar applications. We grant one, deny the other one.
This happens all the time in real life in case law. And every single one is different, and every court will understand that. If you've got one person and 2 streets down, there's another person, and it's the same one, and they look a whole lot alike. But if the character is different, you can always make a decision, and you don't have to worry about whether the district court is going to find that arbitrary or not, because if you have a reason to do it, you've got the authority to do it.
I agree. But we just need good reasons, because in our experience, we've had experiences where even, I think the standard is actually de novo, but even if the district judge wanted to say, I'm going to defer to the discretion of the board, we get reversed a lot. The city boards and commissions get reversed by district judges a lot.
I'm aware of that, but
Okay.
you're specifically talking about yours.
Right. And
you
so
know.
I agree with you. If we just need good reasons, that's all. And so
That's really all you
I
need.
propose that to people. And I think, frankly, with this application, there are good reasons. And so I actually don't support the full
I'm
application.
just saying,
Okay.
just.
Okay, I understand, yeah. Thank you for your comments. Thanks. If you wanted to address the responses or?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I appreciate the input and thoughts. I guess, with areas like this, in the gentrification, for instance, people love the area. That's my thing, is like, this is, there used to be abandoned houses in areas like this, and things are getting filled up with energy, and I think it's really beginning to enhance this more, just unlike a human experience. And the more people you have in an area, the actual safer things like this can be. I understand here, like, I think zoning is getting funny around these districts, and there's things pushing in ways. People, I think, I don't know where this one exactly is going, but people are even begging for more people to be here, which with more people, is that better or worse? But I don't.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's a complicated issue because there are benefits, obviously, of redeveloping dilapidated structures and things like that, right? So that it's definitely a complicated issue. You'll have to forgive me, did you live nearby? Are you going to be managing these? Where do you live?
We live up 56th and Penn, but yeah, I manage them, correct.
Okay.
And our cleaner, we kind of co-manage them together on communication, supplies, all that stuff, so.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I'll tell you, my primary objection with this probably comes as no surprise to you or anyone else. It's just looking at the map and the blown up version of the map underneath the legend. And so, I mean, you have 2 duplexes, well, basically 4 home sharing properties on the same street. And that's exactly what we've been trying to prevent against, is changing the character of that street so that it becomes not recognizable as a typical neighborhood street, but it ends up being a home sharing street. And the applicant's already said, she believes, or not the applicant, one of the protesters already said, she believes there's another home sharing on 47th that might not be in this block, but apparently there's another one on 47th. And then there is one reflected on our map on 48th Street, right by there. And so there's a heavy concentration of home sharing in this area. I know there's some more south of 47th. There are more home sharings over there. And so for me, I mean, my initial reaction, and it really has remained unchanged, would be to support one of these properties to be used as home sharing and not all 4 of them. And so I don't know where the rest of the board is on that. I can't imagine the board would approve all 4 of them. And at the most, they might do 2, but my view of it was supporting one of these and not all 4 of them. So that's my initial comments, but.
Looking into this potentially as a whole, I understand, like it was the duplex comment. The effectiveness of it, I think in this instance, is it's very effective with guests and I think respectfulness. So I think this one would be great that way. On, say, the other property, because it is a house and then there is a back garage apartment, I think that one would be the one that we would mix with a long-term tenant on that. And so, but I also just think that with the district and all of it, it's an entertainment district, but the Western Avenue and whatnot, but it's located prime for things like this, but it's you can have bad long-term tenants, like really, really bad ones.
Sure.
And especially ones that have been there for a very long time in areas exactly like this. The price you put at when people stay, which we will get less bookings because of it, but you begin to get more respectful people by what they pay because it's how they respect their space and it's what they expect. So there's not like a variable of what things needs to cost, but it.
Oh, sure. You can filter out some of the riffraff by charging more. Yeah, understood.
But that's one recommendation is potentially trying it that way for the 2 properties.
Yeah, and sometimes folks will do a minimum night stay to also help with some of that. So you have to stay a minimum of 3 nights or 4 nights or something like that. We've done that in the past. But from my perspective, I mean, this doesn't really change very much from items number 8 and 9, which was also a duplex. And the only reason that I heard the board say that they could support that one is because it's over there on the east side where there's not a lot of home sharing properties. Here, that element is not present.
No, yeah, I see 10, maybe a 3-block radius.
Right. I mean, there's
looking at, B&B.
Yeah, there are just so many in this area. I know Ms. Ybarra, if she were here, would not. I mean, she's already been voting to deny several
be a hard
applications.
no.
Yeah, but.
The big advantage to it as well is actually being able to put a term on it to test it. And I know it's untested territory, but with this, it's.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's anything that you're going to do wrong. I think you'll be a responsible owner. I'm not worried about that at all. It's
just the fact that there's so many of these there that you're actually changing what the neighborhood is or was before.
Especially that neighborhood, they've been here multiple times between us and planning, and they're very concerned about the changing culture and nature of their neighborhood. And adding 4 Airbnbs on one street, I think, is just not consistent with what the city council had in mind when they passed the home sharing ordinance. And so that's where I am. I don't know where the rest of the board is on how many, but I think I could support 1 on this street, but I don't think I could support any more than that. But
1 meaning 1
total.
2 or just
1
1
of the 4.
everything.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's where I am.
So you're saying just 1 unit?
Yeah. And then the rest would need to be long-term or something else, but not short-term.
Excuse me, in your application, you also stated yourself that you would be amenable for one, not necessarily one, but having long-term stays and short-term.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I think most people want the flexibility. If a 45-year-old nurse comes in and wants to rent it out for 3 months.
Well, yeah, and when you have this, you can.
But he can still do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really with the amenities you provide, which this one, there's not really on-site things outside, which I think helps in ways, but it's like just laundering, like really nice laundry equipment where people can truly make it a home and a nice kitchen. So, because it's not a hotel, they stay that way, but they live here much differently because you don't get a mini fridge and you actually have a stove. So it's actually a lot more respectful guests, I think, than.
Sure. They're just not going to be at the chili cookout on July 4th and stuff like that you'll get in a neighborhood like this.
Yeah. One thing I'll add too is if this was a long-term rental, someone could live there for 12 months. They could move out. You get to know your neighbor, but it's long-term rentals, you don't build that renter rapport. And so I think it would be interesting to test it here because I mean, the end goal for anyone in an area like this, it would be really nice to have single-family homes, but it's that point where, I mean, that would be our goal on this, because we're buying it as a duplex. We're buying, I mean, the other one, it's a house with a garage apartment. They're both essentially rental properties, and that's the way that they were designed.
Yeah, I understand. I just think the standard is that these are not allowed. And so what you're trying to do is get a special exception from the standard. And so from my perspective, I don't know that we need a special exception just to test out whether it'll work or not. And even if it's the whole testing out point is, and at least my problem is, it changes the culture of the neighborhood just by having home sharing at all. So I don't know what a test is going to do to alleviate that, right? Because you're going to have short-term tenants there regardless.
Well, 1 year it's far from permanent. So I think in 1 year, get assessed, and then we reevaluate the entire property itself. So.
Max I'd go for would be 2, the garage apartment, and 1 of the duplexes. And that's probably as far as I'm going.
I think it'd be an interesting case model with that too, to see really how both of them work and how the neighbors receive to it. Because also, if the neighbors were all against us on this, and it got to that point, my neighborhood hat comes on where I'm genuinely. You don't want to battle neighbors. It's their neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe getting TP'd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less offended by the garage apartment. I've said it multiple times here that I think garage apartments are more of what City Council had in mind, or at least what they did have in mind, and then maybe a couple of the other ones mixed in. But any other sentiment from the board? I think I could support the one that's the garage apartment, which is, do you know off the top of your head which application that is? Okay, I can find it for you. But
It looks like it's number 14, 1137 and a half. I'm guessing a half means garage apartment.
yeah, I prefer these to be separate, but I understand that they don't necessarily have to be. But anyway, so that's the one I would support, is the garage apartment one. I think that's a pretty clear grant. The other ones I'm not convinced about, but I'm only one board member, so.
I will add the previous one that slept 4 in each unit with not enough parking, and this one has sufficient parking. It's quite different, and there's completely enough parking, and I think when it comes to how the guests will stay at this, it'll look like a house on the block. That other one, you're going to end up with cars out front, and so I just think comparing those case studies together, and I know density is a thing, but what was approved there, that is dramatically more dangerous than approving. Then it's just my comment on what
I think I voted that one down, so yeah. I would agree.
Just to truthfully compare that, this is set up these 2 one-beds are set up extremely well for how an Airbnb would function here, with the size of them as well, because if you throw another bedroom there, you could throw a party.
Well,
this is a great date night spot.
Board members, I mean, we can't spend too much time on this, so questions, comments?
You don't have all day?
What's that?
You don't have all night and
Nope.
evening?
We'll start with the traditional duplex, so case 13, or item 13. Again, I wasn't supportive of either of these, but I don't know what the rest of the board feels, so what do we think about that? Although I will say, if the board plans on approving it, I think we need to reduce the number of people probably to 4, but instead of 6, or approve one of them and not both of them.
That's what I was leaning towards. Pick which one you want to win between 1129 and 1131.
14 or 13?
Let me look real quick.
No,
Would it be
it's
14
the
or 13?
unit. Does he want 1129 or 1131? The unit. Which one of the 2?
That's the garage. No, that's
No,
not the
this
garage.
is not the same one.
14
This is
is-
case number 3.
That's the half address, yeah.
14's got the garage.
So are they identical?
They
1129
are,
and
they're
1131?
mirrored. They're exactly mirrored.
Okay, so
Got the same doors and same chairs on the front porch.
So in order to move forward, we're asking you, which one of the two would you like approved?
I probably 1131.
Okay, so Mike?
Approve 1131, that's your,
I'd like them both approved, but.
oh,
Great.
I get it. But my concern on this duplex is the concentration of the neighborhood. We've got quite a few right there together, so.
Yeah, I still think though with that, I don't know when the other ones lapse or whatever, some of the other ones may not be as good of a fit as this. I think this one fits the area much better than the previous ones. And so giving that time period, I think you can evaluate them all as a whole, because if you have a 3-bedroom house over there, I think in a year I would reevaluate that, because that is going to be a noisy house compared to this. This one is going to be one of your best respectful units on the block. So I know time is an essence there and density of it as well, but also, I mean, when you go through zoning and you approve things, it's absolutely permitted.
Yeah, I mean,
JJ literally told me that probably a few years ago.
I've got a cutoff comment at some point, so I think, I don't know that the board's position is changing by any additional comments, so we've got to cut it off at some point.
Yeah. I'd say 1131 if we did it.
Okay, so we've got, and I will note, I mean, that property was purchased in February 2022, so, and then the other purchase by Chicken Coop LLC, and then the other item 14 was purchased in December. So, I mean, he's a relatively recent owner of these properties, so that to me also just sort of the commercial aspect of it, and it's not someone who's lived there for 10 years and is now renting out the other side of their duplex or something like that. So, for all the reasons I've said today, I still can't support either of the duplex applications, but if I'm only one vote, so the board can do whatever it wants. So, do we have a motion on, well, on this side of the aisle, what do we think? I mean, is there any support for 1129? We'll take them duplex by duplex.
According to the gentleman, he said 1131 would be
Right.
okay for him.
So-
So 1129 is not even a subject of
Right.
question for me.
Okay, so it sounds like there's not enough support for 1129. And then 1131, do we have 3 votes? Do we need to move for that? Or is
Rita,
there-
can we move to approve in part and deny in part?
That's what I was going to do.
Yes, you can say that very thing. Your motion is to approve home sharing for 1131 Northwest 47, and then take a separate vote on the other, or
Okay.
if
Approve-
that is the
Approve
sentiment of the
1131.
body, put them
yeah.
together.
And then deny, I think the same motion, but approve 1131, deny 1129 would be sort of be.
As long as I'm procedurally okay, I will
Procedurally.
move approval of 1131 and denial of 1129. The approval is for 1 year, advertise the self-imposed conditions.
And then in this, since it's 1 bed, 1 bath in each unit, do you want to specify the number of maximum guests that this is
Well, I think
advertised
you
to?
can live with 3. I assume there's a fold-out couch or a futon or
Okay.
something like that.
I just wanted to make sure we put something in there.
Yeah, so I was okay with 3 that he put. If somebody wrote that down, I doubt I could repeat it.
I think I've got it, but do we have a second or?
Got it.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in part and approve a special exception for 1131 Northwest 47th Street and deny the special exception in 1129 Northwest 47th Street. And the approval of 1131 is for a period of 1 year, I think you said, Mike, and it'll be advertised as a maximum of 3 guests for that unit and include the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your vote. And that one's approved. And I think we'll probably still need to introduce 14. I don't know.
Item 14, case 14045 and 58, special exception, same applicant, to request home sharing at 1137 and 1137 and a half Northwest 47.
And then this one we've already talked about. You can incorporate your comments from the prior presentation, except that this one's got the 2-bed, 1-bath home in the front and then a garage apartment in the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one on this one too, I actually think the back would work probably best as the rental, because there's actually a garage below it. So if that was the thing on this one, the 1137, and then the back be 1137 and a half, that we would not approve on that one. But,
Okay.
and it's, with this, if you look at a typical, just on this one, with this case, is we'll have one primary, or not primary resident, but one resident on the property, which is normal to, say, an area like this for a home. And then you'll have one Airbnb, but it's a good quality control. So really, if you look at it apples to properties in the area, this one will actually match up to kind of your more typical home in the neighborhood. So it seems, I see the fittingness on doing one and one as well.
So where would the long-term rental would park in the garage, I assume?
Yep.
And then how would they get out? I guess,
They back up, it's just back up like a driveway.
well, I'm thinking of a home sharing tenant parking in the driveway, but I guess they would need to park maybe on the right or
Yeah,
something.
your standard parking spot is 9 by 18.
Right, I was envisioning them parking in the driveway and not on this little parking area.
Oh, yeah. So this is, yeah, they park all back here.
And so the listing would say that they have to park on a certain side back there or something?
Oh, no, but that's all free and clear. That's just a tree above. What do you mean?
I'm trying not to block in the long-term tenant that would be in the garage apartment in your purported use.
Oh, yeah, they'd only get the long-term tenant, they would only get one garage.
Right, and then the home sharing tenant who you would want to have this main home just couldn't park in the driveway because they would block in the long-term tenant. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, but you can fit 2 cars side by side.
Right. Oh, in the driveway?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because your typical parking spot it's 9 foot wide. So it's perfectly 18 feet, which is enough for 2 cars.
In the parking area though, right?
Yes,
Not on the
correct.
driveway, okay.
And even with that, like say if an issue happens, we recommend all cars to double park at, say, at the Airbnb, which we'd label all of that as needed for us. But basically, when they stay together, it's very common to double park. But honestly, we expect a guest to come with, honestly, like, it'd be a family typically, we'd assume.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we need to put in there where they would park. That's all I'm saying. Because if they park in the driveway there to the north of the house, they would block the long-term tenant. That's where he's.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm thinking.
The long term would go all the way, and they could get the garage or that driveway, and then the other one would come right through and park right next to them.
Does it curve around?
I'm trying to understand.
Does it curve around or something?
Oh,
Yeah, he's just saying if there's another car there,
it's like it's a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
2-car
Right.
driveway.
Right.
I'm trying to understand.
And then the long-term tenant would park in the parking area on the south. I mean, the home sharing would park in the parking area on the south there. I don't know if it's actually south, but it's on the bottom part of this image.
Yeah, so the north is that way,
Right.
but the long term would either park on the right or the left.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the short term would park on just wherever the other one is.
And then not in the driveway is all I'm saying. 'Cause
And
if
no
they parked
blocking. We absolutely do not want a driveway block.
That's what I was getting
yes.
at, yeah.
No, we put signs for that because people like their cars private in the back as well.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments on this application 14 or feelings about it?
Mine are the same as last time, but
Which
I guess
is-
the garage isn't getting rented this time, so, maybe.
Yeah, I'd prefer long-term in the garage.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have strong opinions one way or the other about that, but.
I think I prefer short-term in the garage, but, if I was the owner, I would probably prefer it in the house.
Yeah, and I guess
knowing how much money they make.
not that it's helpful for the discussion, but for my purposes, because the board granted the other special exception, now I can't support this one because there's the same density argument, right? And so I thought he should have one on the street. Now that he's got one on the street, I don't support this one anymore. So that's personally where I am, but.
You'll have one long-term neighbor per property on these, so
Right.
you'll still have that neighborly component.
Yeah. And then I don't know if Ms. Reynolds wanted to speak on this application or if we just want to incorporate your comments from the prior one, if there's anything unique for this one.
The density argument is very loud in my head, especially since it seems that there are 2 short-term rentals that are not on your map, that are a block away from this property. all of a sudden, it's looking like a lot of home sharing on that street.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Board members, questions, comments?
Well, like I said, I was for this application as long as the short term was the garage apartment, but now I'm kind of not so supportive of this. A lot of it just being the parking and sharing the space together and how that's going to work. I don't see that being optimal for sure.
Yeah, and I guess it would be, if you had longer term tenants there, they would sort that out because they'd have a longer term arrangement. Now, every time you have a home sharing person,
right,
you're going to have to rely on them reading the
some,
instructions and following them and all that.
Grumpy tenant landlord guy that lives in the back,
Right.
Parking instructions, though, you use the driveway the same way on these, and I understand, but like labeling lines, all that, even signage, for instance. My business partner on this actually has a CNC that we will do a wood cutout that labels the name of the unit. It's very straightforward. So, but I do understand, but that's also like being an Airbnb, having to operate these. We want to make it as easy for everybody, because if this is an issue to other neighbors, like these people are in our properties and they can do the same things, even worse. But so respect is the big thing, and then rules are, you're nothing without rules on Airbnb. So.
Okay. Well, it sounded like at least one board member is supportive of the garage apartment only, and at least, again, I don't support the application at all, but I think that the garage apartment is more consistent with what City Council had in mind, so I understand why that's the one you would support. But what about the rest of the board members?
Garage apartment only.
Okay. Sounds like 2, which is not enough for the main house to be approved. And so that leaves us with approval on the garage apartment and Miss Asbury, I guess.
That's my biggest dilemma. It's just so many in that one area.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's too many, and we're only going to see more of them. We're not going to see less, so
No,
I think
that's
we're only going
just-
to get more of
yeah.
them. So,
Eventually, the state's going to have to do something, I believe.
Mhm.
I mean,
yeah,
we're not going to have any laws to really
Right.
fight any of this stuff. So,
right, yeah.
like,
The worst thing is because they were just acquired here recently, and that's
Right.
the worst thing about it.
yeah, that too doesn't.
Yeah. This one was,
Need to come to the microphone, please.
My business partner's owned it, I believe, for 2.5 years.
He's
But
owned
I
that
bought
property?
into the, we joined partnerships on that. So he's owned it we've had it for over 2.5 years.
okay, yeah, I don't know.
So,
But,
and it's been long-term tenants. If that makes sense. So.
and I would prefer that it stayed long-term tenants. But, do we have a motion? Sounded like at least some denial discussion.
Let's see how this works. I move we deny 1137. I move we approve 1137 and a half, 1 year, and advertise up to 3 guests in the garage apartment.
Okay, so this would be the garage only. And
Sounds
then
like a party.
up to
3 in the
3
garage.
people for 1 year. And then if you don't support the application at all, you would deny the motion or say nay on the motion, I guess. And then we'd see what happens after that. But if you agree with the garage apartment only, you'd vote to approve, subject to those conditions. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve in part the special exception application in case 15045 and 15058. This would be to deny the special exception in case 1137, or in the address 1137 Northwest 47th Street for the reason that it does not meet the statutory conditions for a special exception, and then grant a special exception for 1137 and a half Northwest 47th Street for the reason that it does meet the conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year, and on the condition that it'll be advertised with the self-imposed conditions and advertises a maximum of 3 guests. Once you're able to, cast your votes. Okay, so that one doesn't carry, and so do we have another motion? It sounds like to deny in full.
I assume 2-2, I didn't see.
Yeah, it's 2-2, yeah.
Okay. So can we make another motion?
Yeah.
I move we deny 15045 and 15058, both addresses.
Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second to deny the special exception requests in case 15045 and 15058 for the reason that they do not meet the statutory conditions required for special exceptions. Once you're able to, cast your votes. I know, I had to change my vote.
Mine was already yay too.
Yeah, mine
Somebody's
pre-populated.
Hey,
There we go.
wait a second.
I think we got a new round of voting now, so.
Oh, we're denying it, right?
Yeah, to deny it, you would vote yay.
You want a yay?
That one just lit up automatically.
At this point, basically.
And that application's denied, or those applications are denied. And I think that is all the items requiring a separate vote. So it takes us to additional items. Nothing on the agenda, communications and board reports, nothing on the agenda, citizens to be heard. Anyone hoping to be heard? It's something they haven't been heard yet? Hearing none, other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned.